In India, some people have tasty chickpea and tomato curry for breakfast. It's also accompanied by puri, deep-fried flat bread. Try to say that fast. It's hollow in the middle and gets puffed up with steam when it's heated up. Some South Africans eat putu pap for breakfast. It's a sort of oatmeal, but it's made from maize and water. This dish can be eaten throughout the day, but if you're having it for breakfast, it's paired with milk and sugar. Senegalese coffee is nothing like a tall Americano. The powder they use to brew this drink is made from coffee beans, grains of saline pepper, and cloves. It's way spicier than the good old pumpkin spice latte and gives you way more energy. Over in Morocco, people prefer drinking mint tea. For breakfast, they grab a couple of freshly cooked flatbreads. They're layered and can be served with jam or honey, but sometimes you can find one stuffed with veggies or even meat. The chickpea soup called lablani is a typical breakfast dish in Tunisia. It can be pretty spicy thanks to all the onion, cumin, and herbs they cook it with. You might get a poached egg on the side, if you're lucky. In Nigeria and some neighboring countries, people have fried bean cakes for breakfast. The main ingredients are black-eyed peas spiced up with dried chili, fresh onions, and fresh red chili pepper. These cakes are deep-fried and are a popular street food. Korean breakfasts are usually pretty filling. They're made up of many banchan, which are basically side dishes. There's kimchi, a sort of fermented cabbage, a rolled omelet, marinated veggies, and jun, a sort of pancake. Wow! A Japanese breakfast can seem a bit more like lunch or dinner in other countries. You know, soup, rice, salmon, even pickled veggies. In Jamaica, people eat saltfish and ackee for breakfast. Ackee is an exotic fruit similar to lychee with a soft and creamy texture. One more tiny detail, it's kind of illegal in the US. It's mostly because the seeds are toxic, but you can eat the flesh safely as long as it's fully ripe. Better know the difference. Maybe the world's craziest breakfast sandwich ever comes from the Netherlands. They have sandwiches with candy sprinkles on them. Right, it's just sprinkles on top of buttered bread. Hagelslag, as it's called, means hailstorm, and it comes in various flavors: chocolate, vanilla, and fruit. A German breakfast might seem kinda heavy if you're used to just having a bowl of oatmeal. We're talking bread rolls, an assortment of cheeses and meats, and if need be, they can top it off with an egg or two. Coffee is the drink of choice to wash down this hearty meal. Oatmeal lovers, head to Finland. The traditional breakfast of this wonderful country consists of oatmeal they call puuru. It's served with fresh or sometimes frozen berries, sugar, and milk. The Italian breakfast is definitely not the main meal of the day. They might grab a cornetto, which is basically a croissant, maybe with a sweet filling, and a cappuccino. By the way, Italians usually only drink cappuccinos in the morning. And if you ever order a latte in Italy, you'll get a glass of milk. What we call latte in English is a cafe latte in Italy. Muesli is enjoyed all over the world, but especially in Switzerland. A typical breakfast muesli consists of oat flakes, raisins, dried fruits, nuts, usually mixed together with yogurt. In Sweden, people eat typical breakfast sandwiches called smörgås. It's a generously buttered slice of bread with some sort of topping. It can be ham, fish, or cheese, and it usually has some cucumbers, lettuce, or tomatoes thrown on there. Many people like it with hard-boiled eggs. People in Sweden are crazy about filter coffee. It tastes so good. The French breakfast is perfect for bread lovers. They have a full range of yummy breads and buns, and yup, they got that croissant thing that most people can't pronounce right. Hey, did I nail it? Maybe put a little French honk on it, croissant. Get yourself some plain bread and some butter and jam on top, or opt for pain au chocolat. The most common drink is coffee, but many people prefer juice instead. An Argentinian breakfast can be similar to the French one. They have pastries and coffee for breakfast too. Medialunas, which is half moon in English, look a whole lot like croissants. They're just a bit smaller and sweeter. If you're not a fan of sweet pastries, grab a piece of toast called a tostada. And if coffee isn't your thing, just have a glass of orange juice. Yogurts, cereals, and eggs are mostly reserved for tourists. If you ever want to try traditional Mexican breakfast, cook chilaquiles. Cut a bunch of corn tortillas into pieces and simmer them in salsa. The tortillas get a bit soft. Next, add some fixins: avocado, soft cheese, even chicken. Put some rice and beans on the side and buen provecho. Want something lighter? Mexico has awesome pastries. There's one that's shaped like a shell, and one that looks like two ears stuck together. A Peruvian breakfast looks really exotic for those who've never been there. One of the traditional dishes is tacacho con cecina. Hope I got that right. It's basically roasted plantain with bits of pork. It's a popular type of street food, too. The two most important things for a Brazilian breakfast are bread and, not exactly a toughie, coffee. The favorite kind of bread for many Brazilians is the French roll, which should be generously buttered before eating and might be followed by a few cold cuts. Tropical fruits like papaya aren't exotic at all in Brazil, so don't be surprised to see them on your table when you travel to Rio. Colombians have dozens of cool breakfast recipes. In Bogota, the capital, you can find changua, which is egg and milk soup with cilantro and stale bread softened in the broth. Another hearty dish is a calentando, made of reheated rice or bean leftovers, served with sausages, avocado, and eggs. In Costa Rica, people usually eat rice and beans for breakfast too. Surprise, surprise. Unlike in Colombia, Costa Ricans grill plantains. They're like bananas but a lot less sweet, instead of sausages. Drinks are simple: coffee or juice. Getting hungry yet? One more country where rice for breakfast is super common is Malaysia. The way they make it is really cool though. It's cooked in coconut milk and served with a variety of side dishes. It can be a boiled egg, a cucumber, anchovies, or even peanuts. Eggs in the form of an omelet and cake filling, deep-fried dough sticks softened in warm soy milk, twisted pancakes stuffed with veggies. If any of that sounds yummy to you, you should try a Taiwanese breakfast at least once. Wash it down with a variety of warm soy milks. There's plain or black, which is milk seasoned with sesame powder and peanuts. A Hong Kong breakfast wouldn't be complete without its very own milk tea. It's all about the technique they use to brew it. The sock-looking cloth that filters it is really thick. When the black tea finally comes out the other end, don't forget to add some evaporated milk and sugar to get that authentic creamy flavor. Now, don't get this one wrong. If you see sausages, eggs, and roasted meat for breakfast, it doesn't mean it's an English breakfast. Take a closer look. See that rice? Sweet bacon marinated in brown sugar and soy sauce, and a cup of hot chocolate. Welcome to the Philippines, and enjoy your meal. It's scrumptious. If you ever travel to Indonesia, don't miss your chance to try some black rice coconut milk-based porridge for breakfast. Disclaimer, it's actually not black, it's more purple. It's called, I'm gonna try this, bubur ketan hitam. Was I even close? This stuff is especially yummy when topped with sliced bananas and cinnamon. They also have papeda, an oatmeal thing made of sago flour. It's starchy, sticky, and looks like pudding, or slime. People in Myanmar are used to eating a hearty breakfast soup called mohinga. It's bursting with flavor. It has ginger, fish paste, lime juice, chili pepper, cilantro, and onions. The soup's made with catfish and even has noodles in it. Salty, sweet, spicy, and sour, all at the same time. If there was a contest for the biggest breakfast in the world, the Irish would take the grand prize. Just think, a traditional Irish breakfast has bacon, white pudding, black pudding, hash browns, fried eggs or scrambled eggs, a couple of sausages, beans, and probably some fried liver. Already figured out how to burn up all those calories?
There's a dangerous dish that can poison you when prepared incorrectly. Everyday food like honey and cashew can be harmful too, in certain conditions. You should know these facts before you eat some products. Have you ever chewed the seeds when eating an apple? Then you know that unpleasant taste the seeds have. That's because of cyanide. Don't be alarmed yet. The seeds have a protective cloak covering them. That's why cyanide doesn't enter your system if you accidentally swallow the seeds. Better be cautious though. Even small doses of cyanide can result in rapid breathing and more extreme and unpleasant results. Another danger lurking in your kitchen is potatoes, the ones with sprouts and green spots. Cutting off the green parts or sprouts solves the problem only visibly. The toxic substance called glycoalkaloid may have already spread through the whole potato. This substance turns some parts of a potato green for some reason. It's a sign for you. Eating this kind of potato can cause nausea, headaches, and other consequences. Are you a bubble tea fan? Then maybe you're familiar with cassava, aka tapioca. This is a root veggie, and it's cultivated in South America. It's also often used to make cakes and chips. It can be either sweet or bitter. It's common for root and tuber varieties of cassava to contain toxins. Tapioca must be prepared properly before you consume it. If it's served incorrectly or eaten raw, the consequences are pretty serious. But when it's processed correctly, it's delicious and safe to eat. Elderberries are known as a supplement to boost your immune system and help your body fight a cold or the flu. This medicinal plant needs to be handled and prepared with care too. If you eat unripe berries, they can do more harm than good. Here comes lectin and cyanide. These chemicals can cause stomach problems, for instance. This one makes me sad more than any other thing on the list. And this list includes a lot of healthy products. Anyway, here I spell it out. Popcorn. There are many studies saying that microwave popcorn is harmful for you. First, you consume the chemicals used in packaging. There are also flavoring additives that aren't healthy. Now remember that moment when you open the bag and hot popcorn smelling air goes up into your nose? It can lead to irreversible lung damage. For instance, there's a diagnosis named popcorn lung. A chemical used to provide microwave popcorn with its buttery flavor is related to that diagnosis. What can you do? Choose other packaging options or invest in an air popper. Air-popped popcorn has only 90 calories and less than 1 gram of fat. Yay! Number 6 is honey. Honey is a sweet liquid made by... I'm joking. But do you know that natural honey is dangerous to eat if the amount is more than a teaspoon? It has a toxin with a hard-to-pronounce name. To get rid of this toxin, honey has to go through a pasteurization process. Let's move on to cherry pits. If you don't chew or crunch them, you'll probably be fine. Yet, keep in mind that these pits contain prussic acid, and this stuff is poisonous. What about ackee fruit? It's the national fruit of Jamaica, and it turns out unripe ackee contains a poison called hypoglycin. Ackee fruit must be fully ripe if you want to eat it. In other words, this fruit should open up by itself. Once it's ready to be picked up, it'll split wide open. No to the highly toxic pink flesh or black seeds, and yes to the delicious creamy pulp near the seeds. Eating this fruit incorrectly can cause Jamaican stomach sickness. Fugu is the Japanese word for puffer fish and the dish prepared from it. What's interesting about this dish is that it can be the last dish in your life if you don't prepare it properly. This fish contains a very powerful toxin that's very dangerous to humans. A single fish has enough poison to harm 30 people. Because of this, Japanese chefs undergo years of training to get a special license. Despite all precautions and preparations, fugu still sometimes becomes the last meal for some people. Would you take that risk? Perfect ciders, cashews. They can also be very risky to eat when they're raw. You probably get cashews from stores with raw cashew labels, but they aren't 100% raw. Before they find their spots on the shelves, they're processed with steam to remove a toxin called urushiol. Cashew shells contain this toxin. What would happen to you if you ate these nuts raw? A dangerous allergic reaction if you have a tendency to allergies. This depends on your sensitivity to poison ivy. Speaking of raw food, raw kidney beans are risky too. They contain a toxin called lectin. This one can give you stomach aches and other digestion-related issues as a bonus. All you need is to swallow 4 to 5 raw beans to experience these side effects. Red beans are rich in plant-based protein, essential vitamins, and minerals. Cook them correctly to enjoy these goodies. For this, keep dried red beans on the stove for at least 10 minutes. Boiling them for a shorter time and at a lower temperature can actually increase their toxicity. Beans can become even more toxic than if they are consumed raw, so yeah, a minimum of 10 minutes at high temperatures. Eating too many untreated bitter almonds can cause many unpleasant symptoms and health issues. Rhubarb leaves are a bit tricky too. You can eat the stalk, but don't munch on the leaves. The leaves contain oxalic acid, which ties to calcium. This makes it harder for the body to absorb the needed amounts of calcium. Mushrooms. For plenty of people, pizza and pasta wouldn't be so great without mushrooms. We all know that mushrooms are kinda unpredictable, especially if they grow in the wild. Here are two of the most dangerous ones, the death cap and the destroying angel. Starfruit is a risky choice for people with sensitive kidneys. If you're one of them, you might want to keep this fruit out of your meals. Regularly functioning kidneys can filter out the toxins starfruit contains. Otherwise, the toxin will hang around and cause some problems there. The next product on the list is nutmeg. If you find that nutty flavor super nice like me, hear me out before adding it everywhere. Small amounts of nutmeg are fine and healthy, but if you, let's say, eat spoonfuls of nutmeg, it can cause problems. Even with 2 teaspoons, knock knock, you get poisoned. Canned tuna can be a lifesaver. It's not pricey, it's a good source of protein, and with its help, you can prepare a delicious meal quickly. No cooking, just lettuce, bread, and a few more ingredients. There you go. How about 3 to 5 times a week? And you might experience a side effect called mercury poisoning. Now, this is related to how much and what type of food you consume. Canned tuna contains mercury, and that's why eating too much of it can lead to mercury poisoning. Medical advisors say that every kind of fish has some level of mercury, but that level differs from one species to another. For example, canned tuna has relatively high levels of mercury. Obviously, seafood is a great source of omega-3 and other things that are essential to our brain and good health. To stay safe, experts advise people to choose low-mercury seafood. Here's an interesting fact related to this. To get the most omega-3 fats from your canned tuna, choose water-packed fish instead of oil-packed. In oil-packed cans, the oil mixes with some of the tuna's natural fat. You open the can and drain the oil, and some of the fish's omega-3 fatty acids also get drained. But water and oil don't mix. Water-packed tuna won't lose its omega-3 fats. You can add some oil and dressing after you open the can. It can be hard to tell if an egg is still good to go, especially if the expiry date on the carton has faded away. If you want to boil an egg that has spent a while in your fridge, make sure it doesn't float. Fresh or relatively fresh eggs tend to drown. In case you're up for a scramble, things get much easier. One sniff is enough to realize if the egg is off. Do not throw away cracked tomatoes in disgust. First, inspect them a little bit more. Sure thing, large cracks can be somewhat dangerous since they attract flies, and yeah, mold, fungi, and bacteria can develop inside too. But relatively small ones won't harm you. If you want to play it safe, just cut around those cracks and use the good parts for whatever you want, except for canning. Otherwise, your pickled tomatoes will blow up. There's nothing bad about apples, bananas, and potatoes going a bit brownish. Thing is, it's a completely natural process. When these guys are exposed to air, their insides kinda oxidize, resulting in a brown color. There's a tip on how to prevent it. You can sprinkle lemon juice all over your apple, for example. Storing it in the fridge helps too. Picture this. You're walking home from a supermarket, your shopping bag fails you, and your groceries end up on the sidewalk. Sometime later, you realize your veggies are bruised. Trust me, it's not a big deal. Yeah, their cell structure is damaged, but it doesn't make them inedible. However, it's better to remove the bruised part of your veggies because they are open to microbes. The watermelon looks as if it just got a tattoo. The ornament is cool, but watermelons don't go to tattoo artists, and the only thing the retailers can draw is a price tag. This mosaic means that the watermelon is sorta sick. Officially, it's called watermelon mosaic virus and can be found on squash and some other veggies too. Good news, it's still safe to eat, unless you're from the cucurbit family. meaning it poses a danger to you only if you're a pumpkin or something. Okay, this one may sound a bit crazy, but sour pasteurized milk isn't likely to make you feel bad. You won't probably like its smell, and if it doesn't pass the sniff test, you can use it for homemade cheese or pancakes. Anyway, trust your guts. If you don't feel it's good to go, throw it away. You don't want to mess with dairy products. As for vegetable milk, some people believe that if it gets layered, it's off. Well, it's not quite so. Try shaking it well, give it a sniff test, and probably it's still good to go. Green may be the synonym for fresh, but remember, it can also be the synonym for toxic. The green parts of potatoes, their sprouts, and their eyes have natural toxins. No matter how long you fry them, those toxins still remain even in the cooked green potatoes. There are two potato red flags: green color and bitter taste. Spotted any of those? Discard the villain. Fresh sprouts don't mean the veggies are flourishing. They mean your veggies have gone too far. You know what it means? Right, toss them. Good news, y'all pasta lovers. Dry pasta won't expire. Ever. Or almost. Like honey, it's officially the eternally lasting product, but pasta beats food longevity records too. Still, air and humidity aren't dry pasta's best friends. So it's advised to store unopened boxes of pasta for about 2 years, while the opened ones can last for up to a year. You're enjoying your Caribbean vacation. Nature is idyllic. Look at that tree with some yummy fruit on it. Wanna grab? Nah, not so fast. It even has a warning sign: Manchineel trees, poisonous. And yep, the inscription is translated into Spanish and German to make sure as many people as possible stay away from here. Those fruits look like harmless apples, but you don't want to munch on them unless you haven't done everything you ever wanted in this life. You don't want to touch it either. And stay away from the tree. Right, pretty much any part of this notorious tree can seriously mess with you. One more problem. It's not that easy to get rid of the tree. Once someone cuts it, it replies with milky ooze, squirting right at whoever wants to banish the tree. The result is unpromising: blisters and burns. If the sap gets into your eyes, you'll get temporary blindness as a bonus. Good news, there's still a way to tame those trees. To do that, people first need to burn the tree at the base, preferably standing far away. Then the fallen tree is left to sunbathe for some time, and after it's dried, it's safe to cut. There's even unique and unexpectedly safe furniture made from Manchineel trees. This is a football, and this is a football fruit. The first one can harm you if it hits you right in the head, but the second one is a bit more dangerous, even though it seems harmless. Football fruit is another example that a chef should know exactly what and how to cook. The large seeds of this fruit are pure poison. But still, people learned how to use even poisonous parts for medicinal and even cooking purposes. For example, football fruit can be effective against parasites and for storing fish in the Philippines. Guacamole tastes best with ripe, creamy avocados, but there are sometimes brown and black streaks or dots in the flesh. Don't worry, such avocados are still edible, but the taste won't be that mild. But if you want to make an avocado shrimp salad, you better watch out for the brown lines down the shrimp's back. This line is the shrimp's digestive line, and cooking actually helps get rid of all the bacteria. But you don't want to eat that, huh? Right, and what about white, holy stuff in your mango? It's not the pit, but it sort of looks like one. In reality, this is just the starchy mango tissue, which means it's safe to eat, at least around the holy stuff. You cut your peach in halves, but the pit looks off. The area around is bumpy and weird, and the pit itself has split open. This one is fun. The split probably appeared when the peach was still on the tree. And that weird stuff is just the sign that the peach has tried to repair the damage. One more about peaches. The black spots on the skin, eat or toss. Eat, but don't forget to peel it before. If the flesh below looks good, munch on it, but trust your gut and probably your nose and your tongue. If the taste is regular, there's no need to worry. This one is frequent. Apple scab. This one is totally safe, despite it being a fungus. The exterior may not look appetizing, but who cares? The important thing is that it's still yummy. But still, it's better to cut the fungus-infested part. And what if the strawberries in your fridge look wet and seem to be coated in juice? Well, this one is a sure sign you gotta leave them alone. They're just too old to be eaten, and they're quite vulnerable to germs. Plus, these berries won't taste the same way they did when they were young and beautiful. Fancy some salmon? Sure, if you like it oven-baked or grilled, you may notice some weird white ooze once it's cooked. Do you know what it means? It means you gotta grab the cutlery and enjoy your dinner. This ooze is just coagulated protein, and it's perfectly edible. Bon appetit! Remember, we don't want to eat sprouted potatoes, right? But sprouted sweet potato is still good to go, and the taste doesn't differ much from non-sprouted sweet potato. Actually, even the sprouts themselves are edible. But let's play it safe at least and toss them. No, you can't see the Great Wall of China from space. It's a cool myth, but it's still a myth and has nothing to do with reality. NASA confirmed it, and now you know it too. Still, the wall is a magnificent place, and you're lucky today. I'm taking you there, so fasten your seatbelts. We're going to China, the biggest Asian country, the third biggest country in the world, and with over 1.3 billion people living there, is still the most populated one, even though India is getting closer and will probably take the first place soon. China is also one of the oldest nations in the world. It has 3,500 years of continuous written history, but the civilization existed long before that. Historians believe that China wasn't populated by settlers that came from somewhere else. The Chinese civilization most likely got formed from local Stone Age people who lived on the territory since the prehistoric period. So no wonder that the country is full of history and ancient landmarks, and I'll show you a couple. We are at the Great Wall. It's over 13,000 miles long, almost 5 times the distance between New York and Los Angeles, or a bit longer than the distance between North and South Poles. This is impressive, even today. Of course, it didn't take a day to build it. In fact, the wall was being built for centuries. Maybe you know that ancient cities had walls around them to protect the locals from the invaders? Yes, Chinese cities had them too. The first Chinese emperor united the country in 220 BC and got a brilliant but very ambitious idea to turn all city walls into one big wall that would defend the country's borders. So the process started. In the beginning, the wall was made of rammed earth and wood. Every next emperor would pick up the big wall project, strengthening and extending it, repairing, but also modernizing construction techniques. Some used brick to build the wall, some moved on to granite and marble blocks. Watchtowers and platforms weren't there from the beginning as well. They were added 19 centuries after the construction started. So the wall is quite inconsistent in terms of material, but it only adds more charm to the construction and shows how much effort and time it took. You can notice that some bricks have writing carved on them. They were left by the workers who were building the wall. The purpose of those writings is quality assurance. They contain such information as location, quantity, and responsible officials. So in case of problems with the quality of materials or constructions, it would be known who was responsible for that. Also, mind that the wall is poisonous. To prevent erosion of the wall by insects, arsenic, a poisonous chemical element, was used in construction. So better not lick it in case you had this weird urge. The construction stopped at the end of the 19th century because the wall lost its strategic and military importance in the world due to technological advances. Walls are way less efficient than they used to be, coming close to zero efficiency. So the construction lasted over 2,000 years, still making it the longest construction project in the world. Unfortunately, today the Great Wall isn't in the best shape. It's estimated that only 8% of the wall is in good condition, and the rest is considerably damaged. Also, around 1/3 of the wall has disappeared without a trace due to both natural erosion and human damage. Also, many bricks were taken away from it in the last century to use in building farms and homes. The wall is being deconstructed stone by stone even today, but this time by tourists. Quite a few of them take a stone as a souvenir. That's a total of a lot of stones, considering that over 50 million tourists visit the Great Wall every year. So we're not taking a souvenir from our today's trip. just preserving the memories. Let's now pay a visit to the Forbidden City. It's an imperial palace that took 16 years to build and was completed 600 years ago. To this day, it's the largest palace in the world. It has 980 buildings and over 8,000 rooms. Why forbidden? Well, centuries ago, ordinary people like you and me couldn't just walk the streets of that town, since it was considered a divine place and was home to the emperor. No one could enter or leave the city without the emperor's permission. Today, the Chinese more often refer to it as former palace, but of course in Chinese. I just can't pronounce that. The designs there aren't random at all. The details reflect the traditional Chinese architecture, and even the colors are chosen with the help of feng shui. The roofs of the city are yellow, which represents the supreme power of the emperor. Most walls and pillars of the city are red, representing fire, earth, and strong support. The floors there are made of so-called gold brick. These are not actual gold, but surprisingly, they are just as valuable. It's very hard to make them, and especially to copy the ancient technique. 2 original tiles from the Forbidden City were sold for 800,000 yuan. It's 115,000 US dollars. You can also see animal statues on roofs. Just like colors, animals have meaning in Chinese culture. Dragons, phoenixes, and lions are the most powerful ones. Dragons symbolize strength and good luck and are crucial for the culture. They appear everywhere, in idioms, legends, astrology, art, and so on. In ancient China, emperors were considered sons of dragons. So it seems like the Targaryens aren't the only ones after all. And ordinary people weren't even allowed to have items with dragons. As for a phoenix, in Chinese mythology, their rare appearance during the ascent to the throne of a new emperor is a good sign of harmony. In feng shui, it's also a symbol of luck, and when used correctly, it's believed to bring positive energy to the house. Lions signify strength and power. They always come in pairs, a male and a female, and they're the guards. The number of animal statues on the roof signifies the importance of the building. The city is made of wood, and without any nails used, they are considered violent, so they aren't welcome. You can imagine that a wooden city is a serious fire hazard. A little fire and the city with a 6th century history will quickly turn to ashes. So, fire prevention is taken very seriously there. The city has a whole bunch of firefighting equipment, and there's even a special fire brigade that knows the whole layout of the city better than their own apartment and watches the city every day. Walking around the city, you can notice something very unusual. No birds are sitting on the roofs here, ever. When it was built, the birds were taken into account, and the engineers constructed the roofs in a particular way to ensure that no bird can land and sit on them. The roof spines are wider than the width of birds' claws, and the slope of each roof is higher. Also, the roofs are made of slippery tiles, so the birds can't land there. What do they have against the birds? Well, this way the city stays cleaner and looks more magnificent. So, there are no birds, but there are over 100 cats in the city. They actually are an important part of this story. Some of these kitties are royal descendants. You see, 2 royal dynasties that lived in the city kept cats. The dynasties later collapsed, but the cats stayed in the city and have lived there ever since. Of course, some stray cats have joined the royalty over the years. But hey, no one minds it, and no DNA test has been made to see who's royal and who's not. After all, they all equally patrol the city, hunt mice, and possibly some stranded birds, and guard the city. So all cats are welcome.
Well, it's a nice Sunday afternoon and you're shopping at your regular grocery store when you stumble upon a bloated package in the fresh produce aisle. You check the product information. It seems well within its expiration date. Then why the unusual shape, you may wonder? The answer is not always straightforward. For some types of fresh products, such as meat, fish, or seafood, sometimes even salads and cheese, scientists came up with something called MAP, or Modified Atmosphere Packaging, to ensure that these types of products with a relatively short shelf life stay fresh for as long as possible. A combination of gases is introduced in the packaging. It happens even before the product reaches your local grocery store. A French professor at the Montpellier School of Pharmacy stumbled upon this method after he noticed that fruits tend to stay fresh for longer periods of time in low-oxygen storage conditions. The types of gases in MAP's packaging can vary from product to product, but the main idea is to replace or reduce the content of oxygen. It's generally replaced with either nitrogen or carbon dioxide. Keep in mind that just because a bloated bag of salad is within its expiration date, it doesn't mean it's always safe to eat. The gases inside the bag may very well be there for their own purpose, but they can also be a sign that the product is spoiled. That's why the best course of action when shopping would be to check if the product is not expired. If it's still within the date, check for any unusual odors or damage to the packaging. If something seems off, it's best not to risk it. You can reach out to any of the store staff if you have any questions or concerns. Most supermarkets these days have a layout which allows for a logical shopping order, like buying non-perishable items first, then adding refrigerated or frozen products. Fruits and vegetables should come last since you won't want them at the bottom of your shopping cart. Nobody likes a squished tomato. While I'm on the subject of fruits and veggies, try to get them earlier in the morning if possible. Veggies that have been sitting out all day may lose some of their shape and texture, while others may be a bit wilted away. Quick tip on waste management: never buy more produce than you intend to use in a week. Most fruits and vegetables don't even last that long, so it's best not to give in to cravings. Shopping on a full stomach might help with that as well, just as much as going shopping with a pre-made list of things you need to buy. Thoroughly inspecting the package of every product might save you some hustle later as well. Refrigerated products need to feel cold to the touch, whilst frozen ones need to be solid and with no sign of leakage. When you get home, make sure you refrigerate all the necessary items as soon as possible. Generally, they shouldn't be out of the refrigerator for more than 2 hours. Otherwise, their quality won't stay the same. Buying potted herbs from the grocery store may not be the first thing on your list, but it's surely something to consider. Not only are they available for a fraction of the cost, but they're also easy to grow and take care of. Just picture a nice herb garden right there on your balcony or even in the kitchen. Wouldn't that be nice? You'll always have fresh basil to top a mouth-watering pasta dish. Since you're still at the grocery store, pick up some coffee filters while you're at it. You may not have a machine at home that actually uses filters, but there are a lot more things you can use them for around the house. They can be used for straining liquids, safely stacking delicate china in your cupboards, or even polishing windows, or shoes for that matter. If your favorite fruits and vegetables are on sale, but buying large quantities would mean they go to waste, consider freezing them. You can stock up on items for smoothies, especially for the colder season when there are limited options for fresh fruits. And don't just grab the first thing on the shelf, especially if it's likely to go bad quickly. Stores restock their produce following a first-in, first-out layout, so the items at the back of the shelf will always be a tad bit fresher. The same goes for tea if you prefer it to coffee. Switch to buying loose-leaf tea, and you'll not only reduce the costs, you'll also be able to make your own homemade tea blends. Loose-leaf tea also has a stronger flavor than tea sold in tea bags. As for the other household stuff, stock up on items such as light bulbs, paper towels, or batteries. Chances are you'll always be needing at least one of these items, so it's best to buy them in larger quantities when on sale. They never go to waste, and let's face it, it's always annoying when you run out of batteries at home and your TV remote stops working. Hey, tell me about it. Try to reduce the number of times you go to the grocery store to buy just one item. It's inefficient, and most likely, you'll end up buying things that you don't actually need. That shopping list starts to make a lot more sense now, doesn't it? Another list worth making, the one containing whatever you have in the fridge. Try to create such a list at least twice a week. Meal planning for at least a week in advance will also help you reduce impulse buying. If you already know what you'll want for dinner on Wednesday, why add anything else to the cart if it's unnecessary? At the same time, start getting creative with your leftovers. There's no need for them to go to waste when you can mix and match or add some additional herbs and flavors to spice them up. Store leftovers in transparent containers for added visibility, and don't be afraid to set out a leftover day during the week. It's also nice to look at them as ingredients rather than leftovers. Use extra leftover pasta or steamed vegetables for a frittata or an omelet. Blend together cooked vegetables with some tomatoes to create a pasta sauce. Put together some wraps for the next day's lunch with anything from leftover cooked rice to meat and vegetables. Or, if you're really looking for the easiest method to save leftovers, you can always turn them into soup. Last night's vegetable side dish can turn into a wholesome lunch if you simply add a can of broth and blend it all together. Even a 2-day-old loaf of bread can be salvaged if you cut it diagonally, sprinkle the slices with some herbs and olive oil, and pop them in the oven for a couple of minutes. You'll then have yourself some nice homemade croutons for that previously mentioned soup. A little label know-how never hurt anyone either. Be on the lookout for ingredients you've never heard of or those you can't pronounce. An item that usually has more than 5 ingredients listed on the packaging should be avoided. Even the way you carry your groceries in the supermarket can affect how and what you buy. If you prefer baskets to shopping carts, you're more prone to impulse searches. That's what a study published by the Journal of Marketing Research claims. It happens due to the effort you put in actually carrying the items around. Choosing a shopping cart will most likely make you comfortable enough to browse through enough products and read labels thoroughly. When your grocery list is not too big, go for the self-checkout aisle if available. Studies have shown that impulse purchases are lowered by up to 32% if you actually scan your own items on the way out. That's because the regular checkout line is specially designed to keep you from letting go of any items you might have reconsidered buying. There's literally nowhere you can put down your undesired products outside of your grocery cart, and if there's anyone else waiting in line behind you, good luck sliding out. The food arrangement on the shelves can also pose a threat to both your budget and your habits. Since people are more inclined to buy the items they see first, the most expensive products are placed at eye level, and the budget options are placed on the top and bottom shelves. Take your time and scan your aisles of interest. You'll be surprised to see that most items placed on higher or lower shelves are often not only more cost-effective, but also less packed with additives or artificial flavoring. Hey, be careful. It's a jungle in there.
In many cities and forests, there are color markings on trees that look weird to an unknowing spectator. In fact, most such markings are used for 2 reasons: to make the trees to be cut or left alone stand out from the rest, and to make an owned forest boundary line visible. There are no specific rules for the color or shape of markings, but the most universal ones for cutting are blue lines, and the markings for preserving trees are usually orange or yellow. Trees within city limits are usually marked for cutting with red, orange, or yellow lines or dots. If you see such a marking on a tree and you have a car parked nearby, best move it somewhere farther away so that the tree doesn't fall on it when it's cut down. Trees in a forest can be marked for preserving because they have good cavities for wildlife to make homes in, or there are nests on their branches. It's a frequent practice to leave the surrounding trees intact too, so that the birds and animals in that particular tree are not disturbed. Large and healthy seed and nut-bearing trees are also marked for preserving because many animals and birds feed on their seeds and nuts. Unhealthy trees can be preserved too, surprisingly, if woodpeckers seem to like them. It means there are many bugs inside those trees that the birds use as food. Color markings on trees in a forest might also mean someone owns the forest up to a certain boundary and decided to show it. These markings can be made in any color and shape, but they always have 2 specific features you can't miss. One is that the markings go in a more or less straight line, which is logical because it's a boundary of a territory. And the second feature is that, according to the marking rules, the markings always have to be close to each other, so that the next one is clearly visible from the one you're looking at in both directions. Some believe that yellow markings are left on female ginkgo trees growing around cities of the US, but there's no hard evidence of that. Still, you can find a detailed map of such trees in New York or Washington, D.C., for example. Female ginkgos do deserve a map of their own, since they bear fruit that smell really, really awful. If you ever had a piece of butter gone rancid in your kitchen, you probably know that odor. The trees were brought to the US in the 18th through 19th centuries, when a drive for experimentation and all things exotic was going strong. And since ginkgos are very sturdy trees and can withstand harsh conditions, they grew popular in the country. Many cities planted them for green decoration purposes, but unfortunately, lots of them turned out to be females. To avoid the trees bringing their unpleasant smell into the cities, they've been sprayed with a special solution that prevents them from fruiting. The solution is safe for both people and animals, so there's no need to worry about being in the vicinity while maintenance workers spray the trees. Color markings can be seen in the streets too, not only on trees. If you walk around the town and see a red line on the pavement, for example, it means there's a power line or cable beneath you. These lines are marked red to stand out the most, because if they're damaged while digging, it can lead to a lot of trouble, maybe even more than with gas pipes. Orange lines mean essentially the same, only those signify there's a telecommunication or signal line or cable. These things don't carry power, so disrupting them is not as bad as damaging power cables, but it would still cause a lot of inconvenience to people around the block. For example, breaking a fiber optic cable might shut down the internet in a large area until the damage is repaired. A yellow line means there's natural gas, oil, steam, petroleum, or some other conduit of flammable material underneath. Lines are usually drawn in such a way as to show the direction the pipe is laid down below, and the line itself is in its center. Yellow is as much a color of warning as red, which makes perfect sense. A broken gas pipe and a spark are a recipe for a huge disaster. Green lines signify there's a sewer or storm drain underground. Breaking a sewer facility can cost an excavation worker their entire career, and for a good reason. Imagine what kind of a mess it would result in. And apart from the sewer contents breaking free and creating chaos on the surface, damaging the pipeworks will almost certainly result in huge costs of repairs and lots of inconvenience for hundreds of people living close by. Since water is blue, it makes sense for city markings signifying a source of drinking water to be blue too. Damaging such a source is not as bad as breaking a petroleum pipe or a power cable, but it still is a cause of trouble for people around. In big cities, though, it's more of a nuisance than something serious, because potable water is normally easily accessible. Breaking a water pipe or main brings more problems to the excavating or construction project itself. The water will flood the surroundings, making it a mess to deal with as quickly as possible. Purple markings also mean water, but not of a drinking kind. Lines of this color signify there's a source of irrigation or reclaimed water down below. Such water is taken from sandblasting or power washing and is normally used for industrial or gardening purposes afterwards. It's not meant for drinking, but the results of breaking through a pipe carrying this water are pretty much the same as with potable water. The mess will be more than real. Pink markings on the ground are left by land surveyors. When there's a legal argument for property limits, for example, an independent surveyor will leave pink lines on the ground to mark the boundaries. These can also be left at proposed construction sites for the same reason. White lines, dots, and crosses mark out the territory for proposed excavation routes or limits. It means there will soon be digging done within those premises. White markings usually indicate the exact place the excavation should be done at. They're the first step before any actual work can be performed. Later, city maintenance workers will find out if there are any facilities beneath that spot that should be avoided. If there are none, or if there's no conflict between the digging and the underground facilities, more about that later, the excavation can begin. City markings can also be drawn not as lines, but as other shapes. For instance, you might see an H shape on the ground. The two parallel lines signify the edges of the pipe or cable below, while the center line connecting them is there to make it easier to measure the width. There might also be the name of the company that laid down the pipe or cable next to the H shape. A diamond shape is another frequent marking on the ground. It might or might not have two parallel lines marking the edges of the conduit below, while the diamond shape itself means the approximate size of the thing beneath your feet. Some markings look more like graffiti, with lots of cryptic symbols and letters, but these are usually abbreviations and signs for the city maintenance or construction workers. For example, you might see a white cross or square drawn on the ground to mark a proposed excavation site. The workers will often write a "No" followed by an abbreviated name of the facility below. You might think it means no excavation should be done here, but it's the exact opposite. No means no conflict between the power lines, pipes, or whatever other facility is buried underneath and the proposed excavation plan. The abbreviations are also written in the color of the facility they designate. For instance, if there's no G written in yellow paint in a white square, it means the site can be excavated without fearing that a gas pipe below, hence the G, will be disturbed. And if there's a telecommunications cable underneath, the city services will often draw an orange "No" and then an abbreviated name of the company that laid down the cable. Another way to say the same thing is to draw an abbreviated facility type and cross it out. A yellow G, sometimes in a circle, means a gas pipe below, and if it's crossed out, there should be no worries about excavating in this area. No gas pipes will be damaged.
Do you hear a sound and almost instantly see a specific color? You may be part of a special group of people, about 4% of the world's population, who can experience synesthesia. You're not imagining things. A new study shows that synesthesia is real, and it has brain scans to prove it. When these synesthetic people hear colors, scans show their brain parts for sight and sound are speaking to each other. Since synesthesia seems to be genetic, some researchers picked 3 families where this feature was present. They went on to play with DNA sequencing, comparing the genes of family members with synesthesia to those without. They still don't have the complete picture of this unique feature, but they did manage to narrow it down to some 37 possible gene suspects. Sometimes, after a nap in an uncomfortable position, you might have felt your arm or leg all tingly or numb. You'd think it all has to do with poor blood circulation. In fact, it might be due to a little thing called paresthesia. This is when your body starts experiencing unusual sensations because your nerves are squeezed or irritated. Paresthesia can give you anything from a burning sensation to that annoying feeling like your arm or leg is not responding at all. It might even throw in some itching or the good old pins and needles. Usually, it shouldn't take longer than 30 minutes tops. Give the affected body part a good shake and it might speed up the process. If it takes longer than that, or if you're getting repeated episodes of paresthesia for no reason, best to check with a specialist to make sure everything's okay. You know what's also worth checking? If you've already liked this video and subscribed to the channel, just to make sure you'll never miss anything. On a regular day, you don't even think about your stomach or its chemical content. Can you imagine if one day this substance just vanished? It contains hydrochloric acid, which is also used in fertilizers, rubber, and steel. Should you ever inhale it, you'd get some serious nose and breathing trouble. Whenever you're chewing something, your stomach starts working those gastric juices. They help because they can help break down protein, activate pepsin, get rid of whatever bacteria you may have swallowed without even knowing, and signal your food to move on towards the exit. Without the acid, the food would just sit there, turning into a bacterium breeding ground. Proteins and nutrients won't get absorbed. Your lunch or dinner might rush through your system as is, and you could end up eliminating undigested food. Ugh. There's a reason why paper cuts hurt so much. For starters, they happen on your fingertips, which are very sensitive areas. That's because they're full of receptors, which are like your body's receptionists, helping you determine the size, shape, texture, and temperature of the things you touch. When you get a paper cut, these receptors get instantly triggered, sending unpleasant information to the brain. Paper cuts also aren't like a clean slice from a sharp knife because of the dullness of the paper edges. This exposes even more of those receptors. Paper cuts don't bleed much and they don't clot well either. It leaves the nerves out in the open, making the discomfort even worse. We're always using our hands, so these cuts keep reopening, taking forever to heal. Paper is often treated with chemicals that can irritate your skin, too. Déjà vu seems to just hit you out of nowhere. You're not a sorcerer, and you're also not communicating with anyone from the beyond. It's just your brain malfunctioning. According to doctors, déjà vu is experienced when two parts of the brain are having a bit of a misunderstanding. These two brain parts are located on each side of your skull, right above your temples. They're like the memory cards of your brain, helping you remember things like locations or other people's faces. They even decode emotions and understand language. Now, in each of these brain areas called temporal lobes, there's a region called the hippocampus. This one is responsible for short-term memories. Sometimes the brain can get small glitches, confusing the hippocampus. That's when we get déjà vu. All this process messes with your recognition memory systems, giving you that weird feeling that you've been there before, or you've already met a person you're seeing for the first time. This is a completely normal process, and you're more likely to experience déjà vu if you're between 15 and 25 years old. It also seems that people who travel a lot or have the ability to remember their dreams experience it more often. It's hard to imagine if a whole civilization could survive without anyone having sight. That's highly unlikely, and here's why. First, imagine trying to grow food when you can't even see what you're doing. Prepping the soil would turn into a nightmare, because without sight, we'd be lost in, say, a massive wheat field with no reference points. Gathering that little food wouldn't be easy either. Animals might be lurking everywhere, ready to harm us. Communication would be complicated, since we wouldn't be able to read something without touching. Even our social lives would be different. Without eyes, we'd be left to rely on voices. Talking to someone without knowing who else is listening. Creepy. If you've ever had a spicy pepper, you know it's not technically hot in terms of its temperature. So why does it feel like it's burning, even if it's just out of the fridge? Well, spicy food has these chemicals that trick your body into turning up its internal air conditioning. First, your lips and tongue feel like they're on fire. Then your nose starts to feel all runny, and you might even shed a tear or two. Your blood vessels dilate, and suddenly, your entire body temperature goes up. To cool things down, you start to sweat. Your lungs might participate as well and signal your diaphragm to pitch in some hiccups, all in an attempt to kick out the fiery intruder. In most cases, all these bodily triggers are caused by a substance called capsaicin, often found in hot peppers like habanero and cayenne. Even though we might feel like we're moving around in our dreams, we aren't because of a complex system in our bodies. This keeps your muscles from doing all sorts of outrageous things because of the wild stories our brains might be coming up with at night. It turns out that most of this brain chemistry happens during the rapid eye movement, or REM phase, about 90 minutes after you've fallen asleep. During REM, or REM, your brain is experiencing some of the weirdest dreams, while your voluntary muscles, like your arms and legs, are turned off. This muscle lockdown is the reason why some people wake up and can't move, experiencing what they call sleep paralysis. The big mystery was how the muscles got into this paralyzed state. Early on, scientists thought glycine, a neurotransmitter, was responsible. Research has shown that even if scientists blocked glycine, the muscles remained frozen. It took a while longer for scientists to find out that to keep those muscles immobile, you need both glycine and another communication chemical called GABA, or GABA. We're not as hairy as our ancestors, but we do still get little goosebumps when we're cold. It's because of these tiny muscles in our hair follicles, called arrector pili, that pull our hair upright. For furry animals, this creature helps keep them warm. But for us, it doesn't do much in terms of heat. Still, we and some other less hairy creatures kept this ability over the years. Experiments were done to figure out more about these goosebumps. They found these 3 key players: those erector pili muscles, sympathetic nerves, and hair follicles. When they played around with the nerves, hair growth slowed down. The nerves and our hair follicles work like partners, making chemical synapses. So, goosebumps aren't just a quick fix to lower temperatures. They might also tell our stem cells to grow more hair in the long run. That's why losing those muscle cells could be linked to going bald.
If you're smelling something fishy at home and it's not your delicious salmon dinner, then it's time to check your electrical equipment. That stinky smell could mean your wires are frayed, your breakers are faulty, or your circuits are overloaded. And let me tell you, those plastic-coated wires emit a smell worse than a tuna sandwich left out in the sun. So don't be a fish out of water and get your electrical system checked ASAP. If you smell rotten eggs in your house, call the plumber straight away. The most obvious reason is the sewage and drain problems, such as contamination. But such a smell can also be produced if you've got problems with the water heater. Another possible problem might be a gas leak. Manufacturers add some distinct bad-smelling chemical to natural gas, so that people could notice even the tiniest gas leak on the spot. This one may not be as easy to spot as a unicorn in Central Park, but it's still important to know. Have you ever caught a whiff of something funky before your stove ignites? That's the smell of carbon monoxide. And let me tell you, it's no joke. This sneaky gas can be extremely dangerous if you inhale too much of it. And the worst part is that it's completely odorless and tasteless. That weird scent you're picking up, it's actually added to the gas to give you a heads up that danger is lurking. So, next time you catch a funky smell coming from your stove, don't just brush it off as last night's leftover lasagna. It's not uncommon to find mold in your home wherever water is present and trapped, like an unknown leak in the walls. Mold spores can grow as a result of this moist patch and can cause pretty serious health issues. Bedbugs have a thing for shoes. Yup, they love to hide in them, but only if the conditions are right. So if you've got a pair of shoes that you hardly ever wear, watch out. Bedbugs might just be snuggling up in there for a cozy nap. But don't worry, there's a trick to keeping those pesky bugs out of your kicks. Leather shoes are a bit too smooth for bedbugs to crawl on, so they're less likely to hide in those. Athletic shoes, on the other hand, are like a playground for bedbugs. All those interesting textures and patterns make for the perfect hiding spot. So if you want to keep bedbugs out of your shoes, just wear them regularly. Those creepy crawlers don't like anything that moves or gets disturbed often. And who knows, you might even squish a few of them in the process. Talk about a win-win situation. So go ahead, put on those shoes and show those bedbugs who's boss. Your feet and your sanity will thank you for it. If your nostrils are being assaulted by an unpleasant odor, it might be time to check your mattress. Recent scientific studies have revealed that a 7-year-old mattress can harbor more bacteria than a sci-fi movie set in outer space. Over 16 million colony-forming units per square inch. That's enough to make even the bravest of us want to sleep in a hazmat suit. But fear not, for there is a solution to this gross problem. Enter baking soda, the unsung hero of household cleaning. Simply sprinkle some of this magical powder onto your mattress, let it sit for half an hour while you go do something fun like watching cat videos, and then vacuum it up with a brush attachment. Voila! Your bed will smell fresher than a field of daisies on a spring day. So don't let those pesky bacteria get the best of you. And who knows? Maybe your newly freshened mattress will even inspire some sweet dreams, or at least keep the nightmares at bay. Have you ever noticed that your towel smells like a swamp monster's armpit? Yeah, that's because you've been using it for too long. Don't be a bacteria hoarder. Switch out your towel after 3 uses. And if you really want to banish those stinky germs, toss in some baking soda every now and then. Your nose, and if you share an apartment, your roommates will definitely thank you. If your bathroom smells like a swamp, it could be because of stagnant water or some gross residue in the drain. Don't worry, if the plumber can't come until tomorrow, you can hack the smell by adding a few drops of your favorite essential oil to the toilet paper roll. It won't solve the problem, but at least you won't feel like you're suffocating. Now, on to the stinky toilet brush. Squirt some scented detergent right into the holder, or make your own DIY scent with distilled water and essential oil. It will get rid of bacteria, and the essential oil will hide bad smells. Just make sure you're allergic to the oils you choose. Moving on to the dishwasher. Did you know that mold can grow in there? Gross, right? Run a dry heat cycle with no dishes but some vinegar instead. Make sure to flush all the interiors, including the filters and panels. And if your silverware basket is looking a little moldy, soak it in some diluted antibacterial detergent before rinsing it thoroughly. Now let's talk about weird sounds in your house. Clicking and knocking in the winter or fall could be from turning on the heating or radiators. If there's condensed steam stuck in the system, try bleeding the radiators. And if you hear a bubbling sound, it could be a water leak or sediment in the water heater. Shut off the main water and listen. If the sound stops, call the plumber. If not, try draining the tank. If you're moving into a new house, check the walls and ceiling for any red flags. Fresh paint could be hiding something, so ask the landlord what's up. And stay away from popcorn ceilings. Not only are they ugly, but they contain asbestos. Asbestos is like a bowl of alphabet soup. It's made up of all these hard-to-pronounce crystal fibers: chrysotile, anthophyllite, tremolite, crocidolite, actinolite, and amosite. But don't let their wacky names trick you. Asbestos is one tough cookie. It can withstand high temperatures, chemicals, and even electricity. No wonder it was such a popular building material back in the day. Asbestos is like a sneaky ninja. It can break down into teeny tiny fibers that are so small they can float around in the air for days. And if you accidentally breathe in these fibers, it's like inviting a dangerous guest to your lungs. Yikes. So let's give asbestos the boot and keep our lungs happy and healthy. Just be careful if you're renovating an old home. You never know if you'll uncover a surprise layer of asbestos roofing. Odor-causing bacteria love to party in your kitchen sink and drain. And don't even get us started on the garbage disposal scraps. It's like a bacteria buffet in there. But there's a fun solution for you. Once a week, throw a party of your own by inviting 6 ice cubes, 1 tablespoon of baking soda, 3 thin lemon slices, and 1 teaspoon of bleach to the disposal. Turn up the music. Turn on the disposal and let those ice cubes do their thing. When the party's over, rinse with cold water for 30 seconds and voila! A fresh and clean sink. Your new sofa or cabinets could be secretly releasing some stinky gases into the air. Yep, it's true. These gases, called volatile organic compounds, aka VOCs, can make your nose and throat feel pretty irritated. And if that's not bad enough, they can even give you a headache or make you feel dizzy. Yikes! But don't worry. I've got your back. If you can, try opening up some windows to get some fresh air flowing. And if you're on the hunt for some new furniture or home products, keep an eye out for low VOC options. Your nose will thank you. Plus, who wants to be surrounded by stinky furniture anyways?
Titanic sank on April 14, 1912, and all of the passengers' belongings and ship's paraphernalia went down into the deep, dark waters with it. These objects patiently waited to be discovered until 1985. Titanic sank fast, and there seemed to be almost nothing left from the ship. Yet divers in small submarines managed to retrieve plenty of artifacts from the wreckage. If you wonder what those surprising items look like, hey, join me. A number of museums have collections of Titanic items rescued by divers or donated by survivors and their relatives. And some of those items are even sold at auction. So if you're ready to spend a pretty penny on an exclusive artifact, hey, why not? The first artifact on my list is a pocket watch belonging to a Titanic passenger, John Chapman. John and his wife Elizabeth were on their honeymoon. When the ship hit the iceberg, Elizabeth was offered a seat on a lifeboat next to her friend Emily Richards. There was a problem, though. Mr. Chapman couldn't enter the lifeboat. Elizabeth turned to her friend Emily and said, "Farewell. If John can't go, I won't go either." Now, that's what I call true love. After a short time, the ship went under. If we step back and return to Chapman's pocket watch, we'll notice one more heartbreaking detail. Experts believe the watch stopped around the time the ship finally submerged. Do you remember the iconic scene in the Titanic movie where the ship's band continued to play while the ship was sinking? The violin, played by the real musician, was sold in an auction for $1.7 million in 2013. They say the band played Nearer My God to Thee as the ocean liner sank. Since we started talking about the band, we might as well shed light on a piece of music found on the ship. It was the song Put Your Arms Around Me, Honey. Considering the fact that paper gets ruined almost instantly when it meets with water, it's a miracle to see those documents. Another saved paper document is the lunch menu. The first-class passengers wore their beautiful dresses and enjoyed their meals without knowing that it was their last lunch. This unique item was auctioned for $122,000. Meals were offered based on class. For instance, a first-class passenger would eat roasted turkey with cranberry sauce, spring lamb, or baked haddock. In comparison, a third-class lunch consists of stuff like rice soup, fresh bread, roast beef, and brown gravy. There were also cabin biscuits, which the passengers would eat to diminish seasickness. It wasn't just the menu. A VIP ticket was also retrieved. The ticket number is still readable, 1342. Number 5 is Edwardian perfume samples. A chemist named Adolf Saalfeld stepped onto the Titanic with various perfume bottle samples. Why did he bring these samples with him? Well, Saalfeld planned to open a fragrance store in America. 61 vials of perfume sank with the ship. Luckily, their owner managed to survive and get there safely, but his samples sank and were only rediscovered some time ago by the divers. When we accidentally drop a plate, it usually shatters into pieces. Now, there's a question. Do you think an unbroken plate can be recovered from Titanic? The answer is yes. Original White Star tableware is proof. Apparently, each class of passengers didn't just get different meals, but was also served with different types of plates. The retrieved plates have a green and brown floral motif. The edges have a gold rim, and there's a logo in the center. By the way, they're sold at auction, and you can find them online. Let's carry on with touching personal stories. The love story of Rose and Jack that we see in the movie is fictional, but the ship surely witnessed many romantic tales. Here's a love letter to prove this. The messages tell us a story about how life was on the ship during the last few days. It was written by Kate Buss on April 10th. She mentioned how seasick she felt and other things, such as she was supposed to go to dinner in a half an hour. This letter wasn't the only letter divers took to the surface. For example, there's the letter Esther Hart wrote to her little daughter Ava. It was sold at auction for £119,000. This letter is probably the last letter written on board, since it was completed only 8 hours before the tragedy. The letter is not that damaged because it was in the pocket of Esther's husband's coat. Another letter we can mention is Dr. John Simpson's letter. Those words were the last words that he wrote to his mother. Let me introduce you to Edith Rosenbaum. She was on the ship with her lucky toy pig. Edith had been severely injured in an accident before she sailed on the big ship. The toy was a present from her mother as moral support for her recuperation process. It was actually a music box in the shape of a pig. Edith used it to calm frightened young people in the same lifeboat. The next item on the list is the scout whistle of Lillian Winifred Bentham. She was a second-class passenger. On that terrible night, Lillian was in her stateroom. She didn't believe that the Titanic could sink. After all, it was the unsinkable ship. Her friend came to her and convinced her to hop into a lifeboat. Only then did she realize how serious the situation was. Moments later, she saw the ship break into 2 parts. As the lifeboat floated into the night, Lillian saw a crewman who was also rescued. Without a second thought, she wrapped the man with her fur coat. It was freezing, so she probably saved the man's life by doing that. The young man wanted to thank her for her kindness, so he gave Lillian a scout whistle. It was the whistle he used throughout the night to call for help. This pair of white gloves is one of the rarest artifacts recovered from Titanic. These cotton gloves belong to a gentleman. The owner's identity is unknown. Fabric can't last underwater for decades, but these gloves look fine, and you can still see the fine detailing and elegance. An alarm bell has also been found. Yes, that's the famous bell, the one that rang to warn people about the iceberg. Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee were on lookout duty the night of the accident. Both of them survived. Fleet was the one who saw the iceberg before the ship struck it. What's ironic is that Fleet and Lee didn't have access to binoculars. They were stored in a locker in the crow's nest, but the key to the locker was in the pocket of a crew member who was reassigned to another ship at the last minute and didn't leave the key. They could have seen the iceberg sooner if they had had pairs of binoculars. If they had had it, the Titanic could have gotten out of the way. Divers discovered not just belongings of passengers or the crew, but also pieces belonging to the ship itself. Our next artifact is the Grand Staircase. Some parts of this iconic structure are recovered from the wreck. Turns out that this staircase became a meeting spot among first-class passengers. If they wanted to visit the Turkish baths for a spa day or eat dinner, they met at the staircase and went together. This staircase was a sign of how luxurious some parts of Titanic were. Another miraculously saved object that belongs to the ship is its plan. It was one of the most expensive artifacts sold at auction. The plan is around 30 feet wide. What else? The logometer was also discovered. It's a device used to check the sailing speed of the ship and the distance it covers. The experts say that from the start at noon on April 14th, the device logged 268 nautical miles. And there's more. A giant chunk of hull, known as the Big Piece, was also found. This fellow weighs 15 tons. The larger portholes were for the cabins, and the smaller ones were for the restrooms. This piece was found in 1994, but it was in 1998 when it was successfully taken out. After all these years spent underwater, it was swarming with sea life. Still surprisingly, the portholes still had glass. Now, let's assume you were a diver and you could only take out one of these objects. Which one would you pick? I have news for you. Rats are ticklish. Well, I thought it was news. Anyway, they have a so-called laugh center in their midbrain, and it activates when someone tickles the animals or when they engage in some fun and playful activities. Scientists discovered this in 2016 after tickling the rodents on their bellies and listening to their squeaky giggles. Now, hummingbirds are the only birds we know about that can fly backward. They mostly do it when they want to move away from flowers. And here's an animal that can't go backward, a kangaroo. They can hop around and cross great distances, but the structure of their strong rear feet and big tails prevent them from walking backwards. Narwhals are those weird creatures that look like some sort of sea unicorns. That horn on their head is not a tusk. It's a giant tooth that sticks out through the upper lip of male narwhals. This tooth is probably one of the tools that plays a role in attracting ladies. Now, flamingos are not actually pink. They're born gray, but throughout their life, they eat lots of algae and other foods that contain a red-orange pigment we know as beta-carotene, like in carrots. This pigment gets broken down and ends up in their skin and feathers, which is what makes them pink. They need to eat a lot of such food to stay like that, though. If we humans wanted to change our skin color, we wouldn't be able to eat enough food rich in beta-carotene to really turn pink, or in our case, maybe even orange. Sloths are really slow. All the jokes and memes about them are true, but they're also very skilled swimmers, and they move in the water around 3 to 4 times quicker than on land. They can do breaststroke just like people, and it's an important skill for them to have because they're tropical animals that mostly live in jungles, and those areas are often flooded. Tigers are the biggest members of the feline family, even bigger than lions. And no tiger has the same set of stripes. Their coat is actually a camouflage that comes in handy when they need to find a good spot where their prey won't see them. Interestingly, their skin is striped too, not just the coat. Their stripes are as unique as our fingerprints. Now, even though they look kind of funny and innocent, you wouldn't want to bother a platypus. These wild animals are some of the few mammal species that can poison you. They have spurs on the tips of their back feet that can release venom. It's not potent enough to pose a life threat, but the sting can still be very painful and can cause swelling and other issues. When a ladybug needs to defend itself against potential predators, it starts bleeding from its knees. Now, it's not actual blood coming out of its joints. It's a certain chemical that smells bad and, therefore, repels predators. They have another mechanism that helps them survive in the harsh animal kingdom, their specific color. Predators really don't like the combinations of bright colors, such as red, orange, and black, because they know that creatures colored this way can taste awful. Roosters can get extremely noisy in the morning, but they don't go deaf because they don't even hear how loud their crowing can be. What keeps them safe is special built-in noise protection plugs. Hens have the same system that reduces the risk of hearing loss too. Not only do they have this protection, but they can also regrow cochlear hair ears if they get damaged in only a couple of days. Owls don't have eyeballs. They have something that's more like eye tubes, and they can't move them back and forth like we do with our eyeballs, which is why these birds have incredibly flexible necks. They're able to rotate their heads 270 degrees. For comparison, humans can only manage 180. That's why owls have a specific system of blood vessels in their heads. It delivers fresh blood to the brain if the bird turns its head too quickly and cuts off circulation. Just keep swimming. You may remember how Dory the blue tang sang this in Finding Nemo. Dory wasn't a shark, but that's a message some shark species need to take literally. Mako sharks, great whites, whale sharks, and some other kinds need to keep swimming. Otherwise, they'll stop breathing. We use our lungs for breathing, and some sharks use a method called buccal pumping. This means they swim with their mouths open. That way, they allow water to flow through their gills and thus extract oxygen. The most dangerous animal on our planet isn't a bear, a shark, or some toothy tiger. It's something way smaller, the mosquito. Not only is it extremely irritating, but it also transfers serious diseases such as yellow fever, malaria, or dengue fever. Annually, hundreds of thousands of people don't survive the battle with those diseases. Mosquitoes also outnumber every other creature across the globe, apart from termites and ants. Grizzly bears are incredibly strong animals with a bite powerful enough to crush a bowling ball. That's why you won't see them allowed in bowling alleys. Despite that, they're mostly light eaters. They're strong enough to make a meal out of whatever they come across, including a bison, moose, or elk, but they still like to munch on their fruits, nuts, berries, and even a small unfortunate mouse that gets lost and ends up in the predator's mouth. The inland taipan is the most venomous snake on the planet. We know it as the western taipan. It lives in Australia. Just one bite has enough venom to turn out fatal for at least 100 fully grown humans. And it can also do the job within only half an hour if you don't have anything to treat the bite right away. They say these snakes are mostly shy and they mind their own business. But, like other animals, they will attack if they feel threatened or provoked. There's a kind of turtle that can stay alive for months under the ice by breathing through its behind. When it gets colder, some animals can't find safe places to stay, so they must survive harsh winter conditions wherever they are. And while bees get cozy in their nests and bears sleep in caves, painted turtles stay in their ponds that freeze over. Since the ice limits their access to air, they extract oxygen directly from the water and breathe through their behinds. Yes, that would be handy. It's well known that ravens are incredibly intelligent animals. They're excellent at solving problems, but it seems they also have impressive social intelligence. They're very in tune with their feelings as well as the emotions of their mates. If one raven in the group feels pessimistic, it's likely to bring the others down too. A real buzzkill. When they see a bird that doesn't like certain food and expresses it in a very vivid way, they lose interest in their own food as well. The pistol shrimp is one of the loudest animals in the world, even though it's tiny, only about 3/4 of an inch long. When it senses food, it opens its large claw that can grow as long as half its body length and lets him water it. Then it snaps the claw shut extremely fast, which shoots out a very strong jet of bubbles. These bubbles can stun or even finish the prey the shrimp is trying to catch. And when the bubbles pop, it produces a snapping sound, louder than anyone would expect. Crocodiles are even scarier than we thought, because many of them can gallop like horses. They probably inherited this ability from their ancient ancestors, who were as small as cats, had long legs, and could run at speeds of about 11 miles per hour. Smaller crocodiles probably gallop when something's after them, but caimans and alligators obviously don't need to use this skill. It's you who's more likely to gallop away when you see them. Now, there are things about nature that you know for sure, or don't you? Let's check how much you know about the incredible world we live in. How many of the 14 points will you guess? Let us know. The Great Pyramid of Giza was built when mammoths still roamed the earth. Myth or fact? It's actually a fact. The most famous pyramid in the world had been constructed about 500 years before woolly mammoths went extinct, approximately 4,000 years ago. Their last known habitat was the cold and deserted Wrangel Island in the Arctic Sea, which might not have been as cold then as it is today. There are more trees on Earth than stars in the Milky Way. Is it myth or fact? It's a fact. Scientists used to believe there were about 4 billion trees on our planet, but more recent studies have shown that there are over 3 trillion of them, making it 420 trees per person. As for the stars in our galaxy, there are only about 100 billion, which is 30 times fewer than the trees on Earth alone. The trees you see are all individual ones. Myth or fact? This is false. In fact, 90% of the trees on Earth are interconnected by mycelium filaments. They send warning signals when in danger and exchange nutrients through them. It's kind of like the underground internet. Also, there are organisms like Pando, for example, which is the largest single living being on the planet. It looks like a dense forest of quaking aspens. In fact, it's basically a single giant tree, with its roots being interconnected underground. We drink the same water dinosaurs used to drink hundreds of millions of years ago. Myth or fact? Actually, it is. Only a small portion of the water on our planet has evaporated for good. The rest of it is constantly renewed. So, mammoths, dinosaurs, and whatever came before them billions of years ago drank and swam in the same water we see today. Not to mention what else they did in the water. Unfortunately, the water doesn't keep information about those ancient creatures for us to find out more about them. Lightning never strikes the same place twice. Are you willing to bet on that? Myth or fact? If you aren't, good for you. Lightning may strike the very same spot as many times as it wants. It might seem random, but the electrical discharge from the sky is pulled toward the tallest objects in the thunderstorm area. Also, the material this object is made of matters too. It's by no chance that lightning rods on buildings are mostly made of copper and aluminum alloys. These metals are some of the most conductive materials, so they pull lightning very efficiently. All deserts are hot. Now, this one's easy, right? Myth or fact? If you guessed it's a myth, then right you are. Deserts are qualified not for their temperature, but for the presence or absence of growth and life in them. The most well-known desert is the Sahara, of course, and it is indeed very hot. The actual largest desert in the world is Antarctica, which is almost twice the size of the Sahara Desert. And you wouldn't call it even lukewarm. It's a polar desert, and there are several others on our planet. For example, Greenland. There's enough gold underground to cover the entire planet in a thick layer. Would you believe that? Well, you should, because it's true. Since 1950, humanity has mined nearly 200,000 tons of gold. If we made a cube out of all this metal, it would be 70 feet high and wide. Recent data from scientists confirm that there are huge reserves of gold in the Earth's core. The metal is enough to cover the whole planet, and people might have gold up to their knees. The problem is, we just can't mine it from there. Hey, I don't mine if you don't. The Moon and Mars are better mapped than the Earth's oceans. Now, this can't be true, can it? Actually, it can. We have a detailed map of the Moon and Mars, although we're still discovering surprises on their surfaces, granted. Still, over 80% of the Earth's oceans are unmapped and unexplored. We can't study the oceans properly because of pressure, cold, and lack of light underneath billions of tons of water. The lava is always red. What other color can it be, right? Myth or fact? Myth. Usually lava is really red or orange because it's basically molten rock from the deep bowels of our planet. But there's one volcano in Indonesia whose lava is blue and luminescent. Only at night though. During the day, it looks normal. No mystery about it, just tons of sulfuric gas. This volcano also has the largest acidic crater lake in the world. The water there is so turquoise, you want to jump in immediately, but you probably guessed you should never do that. The fire on that volcano is also blue, the largest blue fire in the world, rising up to 16 feet high. Ever seen a gas stove burning? Here, the principle is basically the same. You can see a rainbow at night, too. Is it myth or a fact? It's true, and there's even a name for this phenomenon, a moonbow. Also called a lunar rainbow, this event occurs extremely rarely. It's similar to a regular rainbow, except when it appears on a clear moony night after a rain shower. There's a thing called a fire rainbow, myth or fact. You bet! It's a beautiful phenomenon when the clouds in the sky are painted all the colors of the rainbow, looking like a fiery, multicolored cascade. It only occurs when the conditions are right, and those are very specific. It's close to the equator, the weather is clear, there are feather-like clouds in the sky, the sun is higher than 58 degrees above the horizon. Such clouds are made of ice crystals. When the sun's rays hit them, the particles refract the light and create a rainbow. Wow! There are rainbow trees, myth or fact. If I made you doubt this, I'm glad, because this one is not photoshopped. This is the rainbow eucalyptus, and their bark may literally have all the rainbow colors. These eucalyptuses shed their bark at different times each year. Every time the old section goes off, the tree first reveals bright green bark that was hiding underneath, and then it may turn any color. There's a whole set of hues: orange, maroon, blue, even purple. Stones can move on their own. Myth or fact? Well, you'd be right to believe me. There's a desert plain in California where rocks move around of their own will. Once this plain used to be the bottom of a lake, but then it dried out and became an arid wasteland. Sometimes rains fall here, flooding the entire valley. When night comes, the temperature drops and the water is covered with a thin layer of ice. When it gets warmer again, the ice breaks into segments and the wind pushes them around the place. Some of these ice shards take small rocks with them. When the ice melts for good and the water evaporates, the only thing that remains are trails left by the rocks, as if they'd moved on their own. Mud puddles can move around. Myth or fact? In fact, a single mud puddle in the world also travels as it wants, and nobody still knows why. It moves at a pace of about 20 feet per year, and it seems to have started its journey near the San Andreas Fault in California. People have tried to stop its march but couldn't. So far, this creeping natural disaster isn't showing any signs of stopping on its own either. So, there's your pesky, problematic puddle to ponder. Okay, now don't get freaked out, but our brains can store only 7 bits in its short-term memory. My brain, even less. Now, don't even try to compare your brain with a phone capacity, not even the one you had back in 2005. A mere byte is 8 bits. That's why you can't even learn a phone number by heart. Our short-term memory functions just like a chalkboard. You can get some info, but sooner or later you run out of space. To check your working memory capacity, try this test. Ask a friend to write a list of 10 words and read it to you. Most people recall 7 or fewer items from the list. Cats can't taste sugar, as they don't need to because of their meat-based diet. They are some of the few animals on the planet that can't taste sweet things. Speaking of which, you might not believe it, but in this picture, you can see an entire million different colors, which, when seen in full size, it has 1 million pixels, and each of them is a different color. Although you probably wouldn't be able to name each of them, your eye surely recognizes the differences when seen up close. Nah, go ahead and name each of them. I'll wait. Time's up. Cockroaches are tough. They can survive harsh conditions and have been around ever since dinosaurs ruled our planet. But the termite queen beats all that with a lifespan of 50 years. That's the longest any insect can live. Regular termites live only 1 to 2 years. Some of the strongest muscles in your body aren't in your arms and legs. They're in your head. Masseter is the main muscle responsible for chewing, and it needs to be the strongest for you to eat normally. And you know those muscles that allow you to move your ears? Those are temporalis, located above your temples. They also help you chew your food. Moving away from humans, fleas can jump up to 130 times their body height. To put that in perspective, it's around the same as an average human being jumping over the Empire State Building. Dogs are capable of dreaming, and if you have a dog, it's likely dreaming of you. Research suggests that dogs, like humans, draw on their everyday experiences when they dream. There are watermelons the size of a grape. Cucamelons, or if you prefer mouse melons, actually look like really small watermelons, but at the same time have a citrus flavor. Mantis shrimp is one of the most colorful creatures in the world. They look rainbow-colored to us, but to those of their own species, they look like a whole burst of colors. Their eyes can detect billions more shades than ours. In Tibet, there are black diamond apples that aren't green or red, but dark purple. The place where they grow has plenty of ultraviolet light over the day, while the temperatures drastically go down during the night, which makes the apple skin get a darker color. Now, when hippos get hot, they ooze a pinkish liquid through their skin. It soon covers their bodies and protects them from sunburns. Yep, hippos come with their own sunscreen. Chickens are the closest living descendants of the T-Rex. Really? Scientists compared the 68 million-year-old T-Rex DNA with that of 21 modern species and found chickens to be the closest match. Sloths are able to hold their breath longer than dolphins. They slow their heart rates, and they can stay that way for almost 40 minutes. Dolphins have to come to the surface to catch some air every 10 minutes. The starfish doesn't have either brain or heart, and neither does it have lungs. Yet it has hundreds of tiny feet, allowing it to walk, and it also pumps water through them through the star's body. The water acts like blood for the creature. Honeybees have 2 stomachs. One stomach is for eating, while the other is dedicated to storing the nectar they collect from flowers so that they can carry it back to their hive. Dolphins always sleep with one eye open and never fully asleep. This is because their breathing isn't automatic, as they need to keep visiting the surface of the water for air. If they slept, they'd just drown. Humans are the only animals whose brain goes smaller. Yup, as we get older, it tends to shrink. It can do so even because of isolation and loneliness. Other animals, even some of our distant cousins from another side of the family tree, like monkeys and chimpanzees, have no problem with that. You can taste garlic with your feet. Mamma mia! Rub a clove right in your feet, take your socks off beforehand, and wait for it. The chemical responsible for its unique smell can be absorbed through the skin even though the clove was never in your mouth. Weird, huh? The alpine ibex is the absolute climbing champion of the animal world. Mother goats with their kids seem to be defying gravity by scaling flat vertical cliff walls where no other creature can walk. Male goats, on the other hand, prefer flatlands themselves. Our lifespan is programmed with our cells. They constantly renew and divide, but they have a sort of internal timer that stops at some point. Some cells also stop reproducing sooner than others. On average, cells cease dividing when we reach the age of 100. That means if we find a way to trick ourselves into turning off the timer, we could potentially live forever. Or as long as your money holds out. Reindeer's eyes change color depending on the season. In summer, when the days are longer and lighter, they're brown. But in winter, when it's darker and days are shorter, their eyes turn blue. The blue hue helps them to see in the dark and prevents pressure from building up within the eye. It's caused by the pupils being dilated for so long in the dark winter months. Roosters stop themselves from going deaf when they crow by tilting their heads back. This covers their ear canal and basically acts as a built-in earplug. Their crows produce around as much sound as running a chainsaw. Oy. The Earth's surface is not evenly shaped, which means mass is uneven too. That way, gravity is not the same in all spots on Earth. There's a mysterious anomaly in the Hudson Bay of Canada. The gravity there is lower than in other regions surrounding this area, and scientists believe it's because of melted glaciers. During the last ice age, that region was covered in ice, which is now long gone and melted. But the planet hasn't completely recovered from the icy burden. Gravity over any area is proportional to its mass. The glacier left an imprint that pushed aside a part of the planet's mass, which is one of the reasons why the gravity is weaker in that area. The strongest earthquake we've ever had was in Chile, a magnitude 9.5. If an earthquake ever reached magnitude 12, it could split our planet in half. So let's not do that, please. When sharks need their morning joe, they go to a cafe too. Back in 2002, researchers found an area in the Pacific Ocean called the White Shark Cafe, where great white sharks come during the winter. They simply hang out, tell jokes, and laugh at stories about how many humans they've scared, and then go back to the coast to scare us a little bit more when the weather gets warmer. Octopuses have 3 hearts, 2 of which pump blood to the gills, and the third one rolls it to the other organs. Their blood is blue, by the way, and they also have as many as 9 brains. 1 is central, and 8 are, you guessed it, controlling their 8 limbs. Perhaps this is where the expression "thinking on your feet" comes from. Orcas are some of the most intelligent creatures on the planet. They hear each other's calls over dozens of miles and have unique calls for every single one of their pod. These calls are similar to human names in function. Well, that's all I have for now. Bye.
The original Superman from comic books didn't fly. He leaped from one tall building to another in a single bound. But animators who were working on a Superman animated series in the 1940s complained that the whole leaping thing would look silly on the screen. That's how Superman got his superpower of taking off into the air. Just 20% of laughter is caused by jokes and funny situations. The rest is people reacting to questions like, "How are you doing?" and regular statements. It helps to form social bonds. People who laugh together get closer. We humans are just one of the world's 8.7 million estimated species. This number includes 611,000 mushroom mold and other fungi species, 298,000 plant species, 7.8 million animal species. You've got the idea. There are 4 main facial expressions: angry, afraid or surprised, happy, and sad. But besides these basic ones, you can create up to 7,000 more. By the way, facial expressions that are genuine are more likely to be symmetrical. The mountains on Venus are covered with a snow-like substance. but the temperatures on the planets are scorching and no snow can exist there. The frost is actually metallic. An apple is almost 20% air. That's why it floats when placed in the water. Mysterious Pacific sleeper sharks live in an underwater volcano in Cavachi. It's not far from the Solomon Islands. Scientists have to send in robots to learn more about these creatures. People can't stand the heat and acidity of that environment. The University of Oxford is older than the Aztec Empire. The educational institution was established in 1096, and the Aztec Empire was founded 332 years later, in 1428. The tardigrade, aka the water bear, is a microscopic creature that's famous for its survival skills. It can live through extreme temperatures from 300 to negative 458 degrees Fahrenheit, and the pressure that's 6 times stronger than the ocean floor. The creature can also survive in a complete vacuum. Tardigrades sometimes spend almost 10 years without food. Pluto was discovered in 1930 and lost its planetary status in 2006. Within this rather long time, it still didn't manage to make a full orbit around the Sun. The former planet needs 248 Earth years to complete its orbit. In 400 BCE, Persian engineers built an ice machine in the desert. They noticed that ice tended to appear in the shadows during the night. They started to dig holes in the clay in the shaded spots. Then they filled these holes with water. In the morning, they dug the ice out of the holes and stored it in special super insulated constructions filled with hay. This helped the ice last even on the hottest days, and Persians always had something to help them stay cool. Those who cheated in the Olympics in ancient Greece were severely punished. They had to pay fines and could even be banned from any kind of competition. Interestingly, the fines were used to build bronze statues of those cheating athletes near the entrance of the Olympic Stadium with a description of how they had cheated. On average, a drop of water spends around 9 days in the atmosphere before it falls back to Earth. And if it ends up in the ocean, it sometimes takes more than 3,000 years before it evaporates again. John Mitchell was the first person to speculate about the existence of black holes. It happened in 1783. In his paper, he called them black stars. Unfortunately, his theory was forgotten until the 1970s. Raw sweet potatoes aren't actually sweet, but once you start heating them during cooking, a special enzyme called beta amylase breaks down the tasteless starch, turning it into sugar. The M100 galaxy is 55 million light-years away from Earth. This is a mind-boggling distance. The galaxy itself is 107,000 light-years across. It's a bit bigger than our home Milky Way galaxy. In 2006, Qatar Telecom had a charity auction where they offered a unique phone number, 666-6666. An anonymous bidder bought it for $2.7 million. Showers are famous for being able to spark creativity. When you're taking a warm shower, you usually feel relaxed and happy. Your dopamine level grows, increasing your chances of getting excellent ideas. The hashtag symbol has an official name, Octothorpe. It's a made-up word that was created in the same place where the telephone came from, Bell Laboratories. Back in the past, when there were no terabytes or even gigabytes yet, megabytes used to weigh a lot. The first computer, which was built in 1956, had a hard drive, or something similar to that. This hard drive's capacity was 5 megabytes, but the cabinet it was kept in weighed around 1 ton. Butterflies taste food with their feet because their taste sensors are there. If you were a butterfly, you could taste your pizza just by standing on it. Octopuses lay from 20,000 to 100,000 eggs at a time. The mother octopuses doesn't eat for half a year, protecting the eggs. When baby octopuses get born, they aren't bigger than rice grains. A big oak tree can drink 100 gallons of water a day, and a giant sequoia usually consumes 500 gallons daily. The inhabitants of Setenil de las Bodegas in Spain literally live under a rock. People work, study, and go for a walk beneath a huge rocky outcropping. Their homes are built right into the side of the rock. However hot it is outside, you still won't be able to cook an egg on a sidewalk. The highest sidewalk temperature can be more than 140 degrees Fahrenheit. But to cook an egg, you need at least 158 degrees Fahrenheit. Concrete is a great heat conductor, but it's not hot enough to make breakfast. There is a sea with borders defined not by land, but by ocean currents. It's the Sargasso Sea in the Atlantic Ocean, not far from Bermuda. Several currents create a large still area of salty water filled with floating seaweed. Hummingbirds are tiny creatures, but one particular species, the bee hummingbird, breaks all records. The thing is so minuscule it often gets mistaken for an insect. The bird also weighs less than a dime. Hot chocolate tastes better if you drink it out of an orange cup. Researchers asked 57 volunteers to try the same hot chocolate out of red, cream, white, and orange cups. Almost all the participants agreed that the chocolate tastes better when served in orange cups. It proved that the way something is served influences your perception of its taste. Gravity-defying geckos have millions of tiny branched hairs on their bulbous toes. This system lets geckos stick and unstick their feet at breakneck speed, scurrying across surfaces at 20 body lengths per second. It's a proven fact that when you're on the computer, you blink less. In everyday life, you blink around 20 times per minute. But when you're using a computer, it's only 7 times per minute. What's even more interesting, you also read 10% more slowly when you're looking at a computer screen or any other electronic device. African buffalo herds often make decisions by voting. For example, when they choose where to travel, animals would stand up one by one, look in a particular direction, and then lie down again. In most cases, the herd then moves in the direction that's got the most looks. One bamboo species holds the world record for being the fastest growing on Earth. It grows 35 inches per day. When some Massachusetts residents feel like playing a song or two, instead of grabbing a guitar, they go for a typewriter. In 2004, the Boston Typewriter Orchestra performed for the first time. The orchestra members produced unusual music with the help of old typewriters and have already released one album. The horseshoe crab has eyes all over its body. The creature has 10 of them, some on top of the animal shell, some down on its tail, and the rest near its mouth. All these eyes help the crab get around.
So, you just sat down to eat at your favorite restaurant. The waiter comes by the table to get your order of drinks. You've been craving some soda all day, so you order a Coke. The waiter looks really sorry, but he says, "It's a Pepsi restaurant." Can you count the number of times this has happened to you? Even when you're traveling abroad, it's either Coke or Pepsi. If you like both, you end up having to pick sides. So, how about we get to the bottom of this rivalry? Is one of them objectively better than the other? The first category, variety. I'd say both companies are pretty good at this. You can easily choose between diet, no sugar, and even cherry Coke. While with Pepsi, you can even order such wild tastes as lemon, lime, caramel, and even some spicy flavors. The next category is taste. As you probably know, taste is something very personal. There's no right or wrong answer here, of course, but everyone has their favorite. The Coca-Cola recipe has been an intensely guarded secret since 1891, when John Pemberton, the inventor of the drink, sold the recipe. It was then modified by the buyer, a Schikandeler, and that's exactly the recipe we know and love today. Meanwhile, Pepsi's sweet taste was invented by Calum Bradham. Sometime later, Charles Guth purchased Bradham's bankrupt company. This guy also owned a candy company named Loft. Can it explain why Pepsi's recipe is sweeter than Coke's? What do your taste buds say? Coke or Pepsi? Now, you've just woken up. You ordered pizza the night before and are ready to have some leftovers for breakfast. You open the fridge and, you're faced with a tough choice: cold pizza or cold pasta. How and why do both of these dishes taste so good when cold? There's actually science behind their amazing taste. According to pasta experts, your spaghetti tastes even better the next day because of that little thing called starch. It's mainly found in cereals and potatoes. To put it simply, the ingredients of these dishes have more time to get to know each other better as they spend the night sitting in the fridge. The starch absorbs the fat and sauce and seasoning overnight. It vacuums all the tastiness and makes the flavor much richer. This goes for both pizza and pasta. I guess it's not coincidence, then, that some people often over-order these types of food just so they can have some leftovers to appreciate the next morning. No, we never do that at my house. Still on the topic of pizza, I say let's settle the pineapple on pizza debate once and for all. It's true that this is the line that separates many of us. One side of the argument says berries should never go on pizza. Wait, what? In case you didn't know, pineapples are actually berries. A group of berries that have fused together, that is. Now, on the other side, there are Hawaiian pizza lovers. These ones will try to convince you how great pineapple is when mixed together with tomato sauce. It's supposed to add sweetness and freshness to counterbalance the spice of the tomato sauce. So, what do you have to say about that? Yay or nay? Oh, and have you ever tried pineapples on burgers? Yep, they have conquered burgers as well. Some fans say pineapple plays the same role as pickles. It provides that sweet, salty, and tangy flavor that your burger experience is in dire need of. Now, no twin is exactly the same, except when it comes to Twix bars. If you're the one to pick sides, then I guess you've already picked yours. Now, tell me, are you the left Twix or the right Twix fan? Does it make any difference? Or is it all just a genius marketing move? If you've bought Twix over the last years, you've probably been faced with three options: a regular package, a package that is said to contain 2 left Twix bars, and another one that contains 2 right Twix bars. Now, as you may know, Twix comes in pairs. But in 2012, Twix's manufacturer Mars took this to the next level. They began to claim that the bars were not identical twins. Through very humorous commercials, Mars gives the consumer the idea that the production process for each bar is different. The story is that the Twix inventors, brothers Earl and Seamus, once reached a breaking point, quite literally. They disagreed on chocolate pouring techniques and caramel consistency, so each brother went on to found his own company. For example, in the left Twix company, the crunchy cookie base is cascaded in caramel and bathed in chocolate, while in the right Twix company, the crisp cookie and creamy caramel base are cloaked in chocolate. Now, if you ask me, this sounds like a bunch of synonyms thrown together. Hey, I like synonyms, especially on my oatmeal. Anyway, some excited fans have even gone as far as to fact-check if there are any real differences between the left and right Twix bars. It turns out that the left Twix was just a little bit crunchier. And in case you're wondering how that was tested, let's just say it involved a digital decibel meter. The bars on the left average 72.3 decibels in crunchiness, while the bars on the right average 69.6 decibels. So does that mean louder tastes better? You tell me. Fans think it might be due to the packaging or storage of Twix chocolate bars. They suggest it's less about left versus right and more about top versus bottom placement. The Twix that ends up at the bottom of the package during the production process might be less crunchy. Oy. Now, I'm sure every country probably has some other dilemma, but here in the US, I'd say the main one is the peanut butter over or under the jelly debate. If you've ever been young, raise your hand if you were ever in that demographic, then you must have developed a preference. While some responsible grown-up was packing your lunchbox, what did you scream, jelly first or peanut butter first? People around here have strong opinions on how to make the perfect PB&J sandwich. Some say that the peanut butter lays the perfect foundation for your favorite jelly, while others say that jelly goes first since it's thinner and spreads more easily. Well, the question remains, what side are you on? If you had to pick, would you say you are a taco or falafel person? You might be thinking, are these even comparable? And I'll say, oh yeah. They're both great, but serve completely different purposes. Some definitions here. Taco, a Mexican dish made up of a fried tortilla, folded and filled with chili beans, lettuce, and your choice of meat. Falafel, a Middle Eastern dish that is basically patties of ground chickpeas or fava beans, seasoned to perfection, stuffed into pita bread with lots of different sauce toppings. Well, I'm not sure I made my point here, or have I? If this has made your mouth water or encouraged you to run down the street to buy one dish or the other, then I guess I've succeeded. Oh, and in case you don't know which one to choose, just go for a taco falafel. These do exist. And I guess they probably taste great too. Have you ever stopped mid-sip and wondered, is coffee a soup? Apparently, some people are convinced that coffee is not a beverage, but rather a soup. Now, what makes them think so? According to some fans of this theory, coffee is actually a broth. That's because coffee beans are finely ground and later brewed in water. This process creates an unthickened liquid, usually recognized as broth. This theory has its deniers, of course. Those say it doesn't resemble broth at all, as broths usually mean that the liquid has some meal-like value and various nutritional factors. And coffee is just coffee. It's supposed to taste nice and give you energy. Even if you order the frou-frou versions like low-fat, no-foam, double-shot grande lattes with 2%, like I get. Hey, what's not to like?
The Empire State Building's tower was designed to serve as a docking station for dirigibles. At that time, people believed that these airships would become the main means of transportation in the future. The project included gangplanks, check-in and customs offices, and so on. But then the engineers realized that the wind up there was too strong for their plans, and they gave up on their idea. Angel Falls, the largest uninterrupted waterfall on the planet, is more than twice as tall as the Empire State Building. During the dry season, the falling water sometimes evaporates before it reaches the ground. One of the most mysterious sounds ever heard on Earth was the bloop. It occurred in 1997 and resembled the noise of marine animals, but the volume was too great for a sound produced by a living creature. The bloop continued for 1 minute. It started from a low rumble and then rose in frequency. Antarctica might just look like a giant field of ice, but there's actually a huge continent underneath. That means that it has volcanoes, mountains, and valleys, like any other continent. Scientists have recently discovered that the Antarctic landmass has the lowest point on the planet, as well as huge mountain ranges. If any of the numerous volcanoes were to erupt, it would melt a huge part of the surface ice and increase the spill of ice into the ocean. The sea level would rise and flood coastal areas around the world. The ocean waters would also be disrupted, putting marine life at risk, though all of these volcanoes are dormant at the moment. Each day on the South Pole lasts 6 months on this continent. The South Pole only has a single sunset and sunrise across an entire year. Early Earth might have been purple, not green. There's a theory that ancient microbes used molecules rather than chlorophyll to absorb sunlight. These molecules likely gave living organisms a violet tint. During the Stone Age, the entire population of Central Europe was around 1,500 people, which means they would all fit on a mid-sized cruise liner these days. Astronomers have figured out that the Milky Way weighs around 1.5 trillion solar masses, and one solar mass is the mass of our Sun. A tiny part of this weight is a supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy, and 200 billion stars. The rest is dark matter, mysterious and invisible. If all sheets of Arctic ice and glaciers melted at the same time, the sea level would rise for the height of a 26-story building. Under black or UV light, ripening bananas look bright blue. That's because of the chlorophyll that's breaking down when the fruit is ripening. Because of tectonic plate movements, the Pacific Ocean shrinks every year, and the Atlantic Ocean gets bigger by the same amount. These days, there are only 2 ice sheets in the world left after the planet's last ice age. The first is the Greenland ice sheet. The second, the Antarctic ice sheet, is enormous. It's the size of Mexico and the continental US combined. Tsunami waves often go unnoticed. They don't rise for more than several inches above the surface until they reach shallow waters. When the ocean is deep, though, they can travel as fast as a long-distance passenger airplane. Corals that live in shallow waters produce their own protection from the sun. Without it, sunlight would harm the algae living inside them. To protect these algae, which are the main source of food for the corals, they fluoresce. This process makes proteins that act as sunscreen. Almost 90% of the volcanic activity on Earth happens in the oceans. The South Pacific has the largest concentration of volcanoes people know about. There's one volcano cluster that has 1,133 volcanic cones. All of them are active and cooped up in an area the size of New York State. The Zemchug Canyon in the middle of the Bering Sea is the largest underwater canyon ever discovered. There are more treasures and artifacts at the bottom of the ocean than in all museums in the world combined. In 1900, one of the biggest hurricanes struck near Central America and in the Gulf of Mexico. It then went as far as Florida and Texas and is considered to be the most devastating hurricane in the United States history. They first detected it on August 27th, and it lasted for many days. By the time it reached the Texas coast, the storm had turned into a Category 4 hurricane. Hurricanes are categorized on wind speed and intensity using something called a Saffir-Simpson scale. There are 5 different categories from 1 to 5, with 1 being the weakest and 5 being the strongest. The people of Galveston had less than 4 days to prepare for the arriving storm that even stretched out to Oklahoma and Kansas. The Great Hurricane then made its way to the Great Plains and turned towards the Great Lakes, New England, and reached southeastern Canada. The storm was so bad that more than 3,600 homes were damaged, even though they were sturdy enough to withstand the storm. Given the population numbers back then, it was equivalent to hundreds of thousands of houses destroyed, if not millions. Spotted Lake, Canada. They call it the most magical spot in Canada. In winter and spring, this is just a regular lake that looks like any other, but try going there in the summer when the water starts to evaporate. It'll feel as if you've entered a different world, a polka-dotted landscape with blue, green, and yellow spots. Over the summer, there are over 300 pools there, and they all look magical. Over the centuries, people believed each of them had different healing properties. Oh, and the explanation for the vibrant colors is pure science. Each of them has a high concentration of different minerals. We live inside the sun. Its atmosphere stretches far beyond its visible surface, and even though Earth is 93 million miles away from the star, it's still within reach of the sun's atmosphere. Auroras happen when charged particles from the sun get caught by Earth's magnetic field and crash into the upper atmosphere near the poles. Our planet is gradually slowing down the speed of its rotation. It happens at an unhurried pace of 17 milliseconds per 100 years. Because of this, our days are becoming longer, and still, only after 140 million years, a day on Earth will last 25 hours. Earth's southernmost continent, Antarctica, is only the 5th largest one, but it contains almost 70% of the planet's fresh water and 90% of the world's ice. Antarctica is also considered to be a desert. Lots of rocks on Earth have a Martian origin. Scientists analyze the chemical content of some meteorites found in the Sahara Desert, Antarctica, and other places. It turned out that these rocks had arrived from the Red Planet. The largest sandcastle in the world is located in Denmark. 30 sand sculptors who created it used more than 5,000 tons of sand. To make it more durable, they added 10% of clay, together with a layer of glue. They built it to stand tall against long and stormy winters. Some photons that don't get absorbed are re-emitted, and their wavelength determines the color we see. When you expose a material to sunlight or photons of higher energy, it can damage its chromophores, which is why they won't be able to emit photons at certain wavelengths. Red materials fade in sunlight the most. Their chromophores emit red light in a way they mop up photons of the rest of the wavelengths. From 60 to 100 tons of space dust drift down to our planet's surface every day. These tiny cosmic particles are mostly released by comets, which are usually made of dust and ice. When the sun turns this ice into vapor, the remaining dust travels down to Earth. There are two sides to every story. Just like to a regular cotton pad. Two different textures, to be more precise. One is smooth, and you're supposed to use it for more sensitive areas of your face, for example, the eyes. The rougher side can help you remove makeup and clean your face in less sensitive areas, like the forehead. If you like having greenery in your home, you've probably noticed the flower pots have holes at the bottom. These holes are the reason your green friends live a happy life. They're extremely important for water drainage. Thanks to these holes, you'll avoid stagnant water buildup that can eventually ruin your plant. Also, thanks to those holes, roots can grow and expand beyond the limits of your pot. Have you noticed aviator sunglasses mostly have green lenses? It has something to do with their origin. First, they showed up in the 1930s. Before that, pilots had goggles to protect their eyes while they were in the air. High altitudes with glaring sun and sub-zero temperatures were a real test for their eyes. The goggles helped them with those issues, but there was another one. Since the temperature differences between the air outside and within the goggles were big, the lenses would fog up and obscure the pilot's view. So, the company Bausch & Lomb came up with teardrop lenses surrounded by a light metal frame. These lenses were dark green because this tint cuts out blue light, which is also a problem for pilots when they're flying above the cloud line. Plus, green lenses also reduce glare and improve contrast and sharpness. Holes in the side of your Converse sneakers? Are those really necessary? Well, they allow air to enter your shoe so your feet can stay cool. You can also use them to style up your shoes and tie them in different ways too. There are two reasons plastic bottles have grooves. First, if you're drinking cold water and it's hot outside, you'll see there's a lot of condensation on your bottle. Or maybe if you're playing some sport or working out. Your hands are sweaty, and if a bottle had a smooth surface, it would be more difficult to grip it, so the ridges are there to improve your hand grip. The second reason is that because of these ridges, manufacturers can use thinner plastic. That means they need less material in overall production. And that plastic is still firm enough for the bottle to maintain its shape. Wooden coat hangers are not just there to look nice. Since they're made of cedar wood, they bring a nice scent to your closet. Plus, they repel bugs. They're also quite firm, so they come in handy for heavy clothes, such as jackets. And it's hard to damage them. So, they'll serve you longer. You may have noticed there's a colored square at the bottom of your toothpaste. These blocks mostly come in blue, red, green, and black. They are some sort of eye marks, since they help manufacturing machines at the assembly line recognize where and when to cut the toothpaste and seal the end of the tube. Some boots have loops at their top and back. Looks like a fashion statement, doesn't it? Or maybe it's something that manufacturers add for fun. But those loops actually have their purpose. With them, you can pull the shoe up when trying to wear it. Plus, you can easily hang them or use the loop for better support for the laces. Confession time. Remember those attachments your vacuum cleaner came with? Did you also put them somewhere aside and never use them again? They're actually pretty helpful when you're cleaning the house because you can use them for particular areas that are sometimes hard to reach with the regular attachment. We all know what the vegetable peeler is for, but besides peeling the skin of carrots or potatoes, you can use it for onions too. It may be faster than doing it with a knife, plus it will save you some onion tears. Some sweatshirts have something pretty specific in the neck area. A V-shaped stitch you can see in the middle of the collar. The ribbed insert, similar to the ribbing at the hem and the sleeves, would allow the owner to put the garment on more easily, and it wouldn't even lose shape. The V-insert would stretch, so a person wearing the sweatshirt could get their head through the neck. Its purpose was also to absorb sweat. In its early versions, sweatshirts had both the back and the front of the collars. Through time, they lost the back one, and this V-insert became something decorative since manufacturers started to stitch a V at the collar without using the ribbed material they had added before. Brightly colored squares or circles you see on food packages aren't an indication of vitamins, minerals, or certain flavors that food contains. And nope, it's not some secret code consumers are supposed to crack. It's actually for printing engineers. They're called process control patches or printer's color blocks. During the process of printing the food packaging, manufacturers use those colored blocks to check if the printing ink is correct. They compare the color of blocks they print to make sure the brand they print for has a consistent and recognizable quality all over the world. The majority of printers only use 4 colors: yellow, magenta, cyan, and black. Some printers have additional colors, such as green, orange, and violet. That's why you sometimes see multiple circles on certain packages. They test each ink color. Margins in notebooks. They're not there as some sort of a guide for taking notes and writing. Someone came up with a potential solution that was supposed to protect the written work from, well, rats. They used to be pretty common residents in people's homes. They are known for their diet, including basically anything, like paper, for example. So, people started adding wide margins as an appetizer that was supposed to keep rats full. This way, they wouldn't want to get to the main dish, the written pages. Suits have a buttonhole close to the top of the lapel. Manufacturers sew it shut so you can't open it without ruining your suit. And when you compare it to the other lapel, you see that one is completely smooth, without any clues. You won't find such an unpartnered buttonhole on a suit jacket only. Camp shirts, pea coats, and some other clothing pieces have them too. And they have to do with the history of lapels. The earliest ones showed up at the beginning of the 19th century. Before this, men mostly wear frocks with high collars. They would button them all the way up to the top. During hot days, they would relax the button stance, turn down the collars, and leave the top button undone. It was a relief from the swelter, plus their folded over laps would be symmetrical at the chest, and today, we recognize that as a lapel. People stopped using that buttonhole after they came up with the lapel, unless it was for some formal occasion. Like, for example, when you wanted to put a flower in there. That's why suit makers left it, as a fashion feature. Tea bags. It's pretty easy to guess what they're for, but they come in handy if you have smelly feet after a long day in your shoes. Just pop tea bags, unused of course, in your shoes during the night. By the time you wake up, tea bags are going to effectively absorb all the unwanted odors. Binder clips can also have a helpful purpose besides their main one. You can clip your money to keep it together. Same is true for paper clips. If your favorite bracelet broke and you're looking for a way to hold it on, a paper clip might help. Just hook one through each end of the bracelet, twist it tightly, and your bracelet is good to go.
The largest sandcastle in the world is located in Denmark. It's over 69 feet tall. 30 sand sculptors who created it used more than 5,000 tons of sand. To make it more durable, they added 10% of clay, together with a layer of glue. They built it to stand tall against long and stormy winters. You can actually spend the night inside a giant potato. The next time you want to get a proper rest in a pretty unique way, you can book a bed inside a 28-foot-long, 12-foot-wide potato. Well, at least in this cool structure made of concrete, steel, and plaster, that kind of looks like a potato. Teenagers from other decades look different from high schoolers you see today. At first sight, they seem way older, don't they? But it's just because they have a different style. They grew up and kept buying similar clothes they thought looked cool. Now we associate that same style with people that are 50 or 60 years old. So now when we see those pictures from their teenage days, it only feels like they look older. In reality, they just look like the teenagers of today. The same thing will happen with today's teens. They'll keep buying clothes they think look cool when they get older too. That's why future generations will associate their dressing style with old people. Jaguar, black caiman, sloth, giant armadillo. There are many different animals you can find in the Amazon rainforest. But was that right there? Rewind a bit. Yep, right in its center, you can find a humpback whale. It's rare to see one even in the middle of the ocean, and it's really jaw-dropping to find one in the middle of the Amazon.
And that's what happened in 2019 when local people found a lifeless humpback. The animal probably washed into the river mouth of the Amazon and ended on land when tides pulled back. Elephants have enormous ears, and normally they hold them out to scan noise back and forth. But there are sometimes distant vocalizations and noise they can hear with their feet. When they detect something that's far away, elephants freeze and lean forward. They transfer weight to their front legs and may even lift up a front foot. People often think apple pie originally came from America, but nope. Apples are actually native to Asia, and the first recorded recipe for apple pie appeared in England. When a material fades in the sun, where do you think the color goes? A certain material gets the color from the regions of molecules called chromophores. They absorb photons at particular wavelengths. Photon is the basic unit of light. Some photons that don't get absorbed are re-emitted, and their wavelength determines the color we see. When you expose a material to sunlight or photons of higher energy, it can damage its chromophores, which is why they won't be able to emit photons at certain wavelengths. Red materials fade in sunlight the most. Their chromophores emit red light in a way that they mop up photons of the rest of the wavelengths. You're preparing a meal, cutting the vegetables, and oh no, here come the tears. We cry when we cut onions because breaking the skin releases enzymes and sulfenic acid. When they combine, they produce a gas that spreads through the air and irritates our eyes. This prompts the tear glands that start producing tears to flush this irritating acid out. Your brain can't perform two things that ask for high-level brain function at the same time. Yep, you can't really multitask. We can't consider low-level functions such as pumping blood and breathing in multitasking. Only those actions you really have to think through. So what you see as multitasking is rapidly switching between two or more tasks. Try to move your feet and hands in the opposite direction. Sit on a chair and turn your left leg clockwise. Draw an 8 shape with your left hand at the same time. Or do the same with the right hand and leg. It seems like your leg changed its direction, right? It's what happens with almost everybody. If you turn your leg counterclockwise, the same will happen. When you get on a roundabout that's spinning really fast, you can feel that strange force, and it seems like it wants to throw you off. Our planet is like a huge roundabout that's spinning in space at approximately 1,000 miles per hour. But we don't feel that spinning force because there's another force acting on our planet and on us: gravity. It holds us firmly to the ground around 1,000 times more strongly than our planet is spinning and trying to catapult us into space. The toothpaste contains sweeteners because it has detergents that create foam when you brush your teeth, and it needs something that will mask the awful soapy taste they bring. Of course, sugar is out. But there are other sweeteners that do a nice job with covering detergents. These sweetener chemicals attract water. They keep water molecules locked in the toothpaste, so it doesn't dry out. Have you ever noticed how you're often less hungry when it's hot outside? All the metabolic processes that are happening in our body, including digestion, produce heat. For every 1,000 calories you eat, your body converts only 250 into energy that's actually useful. The rest of the calories turn into waste heat. When it's hot outside, your body is working pretty hard to keep you safe from overheating, so it doesn't really need the extra heat it generates digesting a big lunch you had. That's why your body kinda dials back your appetite for a while and pulls more energy from the fat reserves it previously stored. Sometimes dreams can seem more vivid when you don't sleep in your own bed. When you spend the night in a hotel or some other place you're not quite familiar with, you experience something scientists call the first night effect. In one of the studies, they discovered the left side of our brain sleeps lighter than the right side during the first night in a new environment. It's probably like this because of an evolutionary mechanism that keeps us alert to potential predators and dangers. There are probably no monsters under the bed in your hotel room, but you wouldn't be so sure if you had lived thousands of years ago. You're also more likely to wake up during your first night in new surroundings. When you wake up a lot, you remember your dreams way better, which is why they can feel more vivid in such situations. You're at work, you just had lunch, and now you're getting ready to finish the final task for the day. But you just can't. You got such an energy crash you want to lie down and take a nap to feel alive again. This can be because of a carb-heavy meal, not getting enough sleep the night before, or not drinking enough water. And there's one more possible reason. There's a small region in your brain that controls your internal body clock, also called circadian rhythm. This part sends signals to your body to release melatonin, a snooze-inducing hormone. This way, it makes you feel sleepy and lowers your body temperature too. You go through a miniature version of this process somewhere between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. too. We still don't know why, but some researchers think it could be because our circadian rhythm has both a primary 24-hour cycle and a 12-hour one. You may feel like the best ideas come to your mind when you're trying to fall asleep. The transition from the point where you're awake to where you're asleep is called the hypnagogic state. Scientists believe it could be related to creativity. Mary Shelley said that the idea for her popular novel, Frankenstein, occurred during the waking dream stage. Salvador Dali, a famous artist, called this phase the slumber with a key. In this state, your mind feels free to wander and has no mobile phones, other people, or something else that can disrupt it. That's why it has more space for some spontaneous ideas and creative thoughts. If you fall asleep right after you enter this state, you'll probably forget most of your inspirational ideas. So, keep a paper and pen by your bed, just in case. 98 degrees Fahrenheit is a temperature that feels hot, even though the human body is of the same temperature. Well, actually, this is about the average temperature of our core. Our skin is about 93 degrees Fahrenheit, but our fingers, toes, and face can be much colder. The receptors we have in our skin react to differences and changes in temperature. When you touch your bare stomach with your hand, the hand will register warmth, but it will be cooler for your stomach, even though both of them have skin temperature. Similar to that, if you put a finger in your mouth, the inside will feel way warmer to the finger than to your tongue.
Even the smartest folks make vital home security mistakes, such as using combination locks. Well, that means dummies like me are in real trouble. There's no denying combination locks are convenient. You don't need to worry about losing the key or anything. But one of the biggest problems combination locks have is that they can be cracked through trial and error, and you don't need to be Danny Ocean to do that. Try enough times and you'll be able to unlock one. So, convenience? It comes at a cost to security. This is all due to the mechanics of how these locks work. Inside a combination lock, there are several rotating discs. Each of these is aligned with a number on the dial. When you enter the correct combination, these internal components align perfectly, creating a clear path that allows the lock to open. This simplicity, however, is also their Achilles heel. The reliance on a fixed numeric code means that anyone with time and patience can attempt a brute force approach, methodically trying different combinations until they stumble upon the correct one. That's why combination locks offer a more predictable and therefore exploitable challenge to potential intruders. Moreover, there are other practical limitations. Some combination locks may not be as resistant to extreme weather conditions, such as rain, snow, or freezing temperatures, which can affect their performance and reliability. Additionally, entering a combination can be slower than using a key, potentially inconvenient or problematic in emergencies or situations where quick access is required. With that, I am by no means suggesting that you can put your trust in other types of locks. All come with their own weaknesses. Now let's take key locks next. At first glance, with their unique physical keys and intricate internal mechanisms, They appear to offer a higher degree of security. Sure, their complex design with pins that must align perfectly with the key's cuts seems to provide a sturdy safeguard against intruders. But the truth is keyed locks can be vulnerable to various bypass methods, including lockpicking, a skill that determined intruders can easily master. Additionally, they make way for mistakes within a mistake. Talk about security inception. The common practice of hiding spare keys around the home, like under the doormat or stones, significantly weakens the security keyed locks offer. There's also the risk of keys being duplicated without the owner's knowledge. And even if you are careful not to leave your key anywhere or give it to anyone, there's also the possibility that an intruder might try to break the lock. If the thief has strong muscles and knows you will not be home for a while, then kiss your valuable belongings goodbye. Now, how about key safe locks? You know, the ones that people use for rental apartments? These devices are typically mounted to a wall or other secure surface and can be accessed only by entering a correct code. They provide a secure place to store your keys, eliminating the risky game of hide-and-seek with your spare keys under flower pots. Sounds like a solid plan, right? Well, before you heave a sigh of relief, it's important to remember our mantra: no lock is impenetrable. Here's the word I'm trying to say. Anyways, key lock safes are not only susceptible to brute force attacks, but also susceptible to the same risk as combination locks. Furthermore, the very visibility of a key safe can sometimes be a giveaway to burglars that you're security conscious, potentially making your home a more tempting target. It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? But the worst part is even a piece of paper might be enough to open them. Key lock safes typically consist of several rotating wheels inside the lock. Each wheel has a small notch known as a gate. When you dial in the combination, you're actually rotating these wheels. The correct combination aligns all the gates in a straight line. Once aligned, a bar or lever inside the lock, called the fence, drops into these aligned gates and the lock can be opened. The intruders might be able to figure out the configuration on key lock safes using a thin piece of paper. And the rest of the process involves some mathematical skills as well as lots of luck. But since this whole thing will take quite some time, it's likely someone will be able to spot them before they succeed. So, is there a lock that you can fully trust to keep the bad guys at bay? Enter the era of digital door locks. This seemingly futuristic solution comes equipped with features like fingerprint recognition, keypads with unique PIN codes, and even remote access through your smartphone. But wait before you run down to the tech stores to get one. It's crucial to recognize that while digital locks can offer enhanced security features like tamper alerts and the ability to change codes on a whim, they're not without their own vulnerabilities. For instance, electronic locks can be susceptible to technical glitches, hacking, or battery failures. Another new tech lock type is biometric locks. They sound like they belong to spy movies, but they're actually quite handy. Instead of using keys or codes, these locks use parts of your body, like your fingerprint, your face, or even your eyes to unlock doors. This way, they provide protection against key thefts, code losses, ripping, melting, drilling, and hacking. In addition, some safes have an opening delay and automatic blocking in the event of an unsuccessful entry. This makes biometric locks the most secure on the market. However, they come with a hefty price tag, as they're among the most expensive types. But there's more to consider beyond the price tag before investing in one. For example, if the fingerprint or facial recognition features fail, these locks also come with backup options like a keypad or a regular key that will allow you to open them. In addition, they require maintenance every now and then. Remember, they run on batteries, so you'll have to replace them once in a while. You'll also need to clean the locks, especially the fingerprint part, to ensure they recognize you every time. And let's not forget the privacy issue. Storing your personal biometric info into a lock does raise a few eyebrows for some folks. You see, no lock is totally perfect. But the key to home security isn't just in the lock you choose, it's also in taking some other simple precautions as well. For example, you might be one of the loners who prefers to keep their daily life to themselves. But for security reasons, it would be wise to consider making some friends in your neighborhood. You see, engaging with neighbors and participating in a neighborhood watch program can enhance security too. When you're going away, you can let your community know. In this way, the alert neighbors can report any suspicious activity they see around your house. Valuables that are easily seen through windows or left unguarded in the yard can attract unwanted attention. Make sure to keep expensive items out of sight and use curtains or blinds effectively to reduce this risk. Many homeowners overlook securing second-floor windows and doors, assuming they are inaccessible. However, burglars can find creative ways to reach these points. Leave no ladder or any other equipment that will allow the thieves to climb your house and secure every floor. Failing to update or maintain your home security system can leave it vulnerable to tampering or disablement. Make sure to get regular maintenance and updates to ensure it functions effectively. Poor outdoor lighting provides cover for burglars to approach unseen. Try solutions such as installing motion sensor lights and ensuring the exterior of your house is well lit to deter potential intruders. You also need to consider the fact that no matter how many security measures you take, there's always the possibility of a thief being able to bypass them and enter your home. That's why you should have a safe in your house. It's a secondary line of defense that's often overlooked, but in the case of a break-in, a secure safe can help you protect valuable documents, jewelry, and other irreplaceable items. And lastly, an often overlooked aspect of home security is digital. If your Wi-Fi network is unsecured, this can be a gateway for cybercriminals to access your personal information in smart home devices. Using a strong password and considering advanced security measures can be beneficial to avoid that. Or you can just get a dog with a really loud bark. Hey, works for me. Have you wondered why aren't keyboards organized in alphabetical order? Well, modern laptop keyboards we all know go back to typewriters, and those, at first, had piano-like keys and they were arranged alphabetically. But it wasn't convenient. Most commonly used letters were too close together, which resulted in frequent mechanical jams, so typing was pretty annoying. So Mr. Christopher Latham Scholes, one of the inventors of the first typewriter, came up with the QWERTY keyboard layout instead. The idea behind that layout was to spread the most commonly used combination of letters like ST or TH. This way it was preventing mechanical problems. This realignment helps the alternation between both hands, which increases the speed of typing. Now, why do we even need two shift keys if both do the same thing? Well, it's just to make it more convenient to use with a single key on the keyboard. When the key you need to use is located on the right side of the keyboard, you use right shift, and when the key is on the left side, you use the left shift. The same applies to two Alt and two Control keys. Now, even though they serve the same purpose, they still have different scan codes, and you can assign each of them with different functions manually if you like. For example, in an international keyboard setting, the right Alt allows typing a German letter SZ, while the left Alt won't do it. Those little feet keyboards are actually standard. The height of the keyboard should be adjustable, allowing an angle between 0 and 15 degrees. The recommended angle is 5 to 12 degrees, by the way. The reason to fold the feet out is for you to see the keys better, in case you don't touch type. A little problem that comes with that is that, in this case, your wrists are bent, and it can be tiring to keep them in this position and type. So, the feet are there to give you a choice. The symbol here isn't some brand new internet invention. No one knows exactly where it originated, but researchers date it back to Middle Ages at least. The first documentation found with that symbol is from the year 1536. They say that at is short for the Latin word ad, which means at, to, or towards. At first, they wrote it as ad, but the upstroke of the D was curved left to the A. With time, to make it shorter, the D was just replaced with the circle around the A. It was also commonly used back in the older days to mark prices. Then, for a while, the symbol disappeared. It wasn't even in the first typewriters' keyboards. But with the development of computers, people needed a symbol to connect several machines. For example, they needed to send something to a particular user at a particular computer, and the name of the user and the name of the computer had to be divided by something, so they came back to the @ symbol. Meanwhile, the two sides of a cotton pad are different because each of them has a particular purpose. A cotton pad has several layers to ensure that it's soft, strong, and can absorb liquids. The edge is stitched to hold it all together. The smooth side of the pad is for applying, and the side with the pattern is best for cleansing and makeup removal. Also, any pack of cotton pads has those strings on the sides. They're there so you can hang the package somewhere. Then you can open the package on the bottom, where the perforated line is, and take them out from the bottom one by one. Speaking of eggs, I think I will. All eggs have numbers stamped on them, and they say something about the egg. The first digit can be 0, 1, 2, or 3, and it tells you about how the egg was produced. 0 means it's organic. 1 says it's a free-range egg. 2 says that it's from the indoors, and 3 means it comes from furnished cages. Sounds posh, doesn't it? Then there are letters, which are country codes that tell you in what country the egg was produced. The other 4 of 5 digits are the exact code of the egg producer. Also, there's a 3-digit number on the side of an egg carton, and that number indicates the day of the year when the eggs were produced. So 001 stands for January 1st, 120 stands for April 30th, and 365 is December what? 31st. You were paying attention. All eggs are typically either white or brown. The color depends on the breed of the hen. Typically, white chickens lay white-shelled eggs, and dark chickens lay brown-shelled eggs. But even chickens of the same breed can lay eggs of different colors, depending on the genetics of the particular hen. Also, some chicken breeds lay bluish eggs. And no, there's no nutritional difference between white and brown eggs. Speaking of stuff to use in the morning, coffee stirring sticks have holes in them. Plastic usually bends when put in hot drinks. With the holes, the stick becomes sturdier and can withstand the heat. The bonus is that there's less plastic required to produce them this way. Have you noticed that a pair of wooden chopsticks are always connected? Good for you, it's a new pair. This way, you can always find out if someone had used them before you. Ew. Microwave ovens cook and heat up your food by using microwave radiation and making it pass through your food. This radiation can heat up your body just like it heats up the food. That's why this radiation is dangerous for people, because it'll cause burns if one is exposed to it. That's why we now call my dad Pop. For this reason, microwave ovens are designed in a way to prevent microwaves from escaping. The door that is made of plastic and glass isn't enough to keep radiation inside. So, say thanks to this great pattern microwave ovens have on their doors. It's made of metal and acts as a cage, not allowing the waves to pass. So, that pattern is always there to protect you. Most cell phones with good camera quality have several lenses. Each of them serves a particular purpose. One lens is typically used for close shots to get sharper details, but it's not good to capture things in motion. So, a second lens is often added to make motion photos. Other lenses might have other purposes too, adding up for the best possible result. There's a very cool story about why books and notebooks have margins. Originally, they were meant to protect the notes because rodents would eat the edges of the paper. People didn't want any notes or any text to be damaged, so they had to adapt. They started to leave some space off the edges. These days, we don't have this problem anymore, but margins stayed for many reasons, including aesthetics, binding, and leaving room for your own notes and comments. The rodents have moved on to social media. Most private houses have triangular-shaped roofs. The thing is that if the roof was flat, water and especially snow would accumulate there in huge quantities. It can all get pretty heavy, and the roof can collapse under this weight. The triangle shape allows the water and the snow to slide down. Mattresses always have those fancy designs, but it turns out that unlike the triangular roofs or most stuff in this video, there's no big purpose to them. Mattress manufacturers produce a limited number of different mattresses, and the only way to make them look different is to come up with a fancy stitching pattern. Two mattresses from two different companies might be the exact same quality but cost differently. Most people won't know and will decide that their quality is different. So, when shopping, just disregard the pattern. Or just sleep on it. If you've stayed at a hotel several times, you might have noticed that they typically have plain white bedsheets and towels. First off, the white color looks fancy and luxurious in comparison to some silly patterns. But the other reason is that it's a way to demonstrate the cleanliness of the sheets. Any stains would be crystal clear on white, so pure white sheets demonstrate great sanitary conditions. Another thing about hotel rooms is that some of them don't have any clocks. This, again, goes back to aesthetics and trying to make them look luxurious. Clocks give off some hardcore home vibes, and that's not what hotels strive for. But you probably don't even notice this because you have your cell phone to check the time. Also, many hotels don't have rooms with the number 13 or even a 13th floor. It might seem weird to call the 13th floor the 14th floor, but if it can soothe superstitious guests, then why not? Just don't walk under a ladder getting to your room.
When sharks need their morning joe, they go to a cafe too. Back in 2002, researchers found an area in the Pacific Ocean called the White Shark Cafe, where great white sharks come during the winter. They simply hang out, tell jokes and laugh at stories of how many humans they've scared, and then go back to the coast to scare us a little bit more when the weather gets warmer. There are watermelons the size of a grape. Cucamelons, or if you prefer, mouse melons, actually look like really small watermelons, but at the same time have a citrus flavor. An Australian barista set a world record for the most cappuccinos made in 1 hour, 420 of them. A good bar when you're late for work but desperately need coffee. Okay, researchers have found many things that are evidence of prehistoric animals, or our human ancestors that lived thousands of years ago, like bones, teeth, stone tools, and a piece of chewing gum dating from almost 10,000 years ago. A million seconds is somewhere around 12 days, and a billion seconds is almost 32 years. Nothing unusual here, just a little bit of good old math that reminds you of how cool time is. All road signs are important, of course, but there's one to rule them all: the falling rocks sign. If you see it ahead, make sure to drive slowly and look around carefully. This sign means there are rock slides possible in that area, and your life literally depends on whether you pay attention or not. There's even a village in Switzerland, surrounded by hills, which has a traffic light that tracks the movements of rocks and indicates whether it's safe to drive ahead or not. When someone mentions the biggest desert, you probably picture the endless sandy surface of the Sahara, burning under the hot sun. Well, not quite. The biggest desert is the Antarctic Polar Desert, which covers about 5.5 million square miles in Antarctica. Sounds strange at first, but the definition says that a desert is a place that gets less than 10 inches of precipitation annually. Still, it doesn't say if it has to be hot. The first commercial passenger flight happened at the beginning of the 20th century. It was a 23-minute flight that cost $400, which is about $8,500 today, and the plane flew between 2 cities in Florida. In Tibet, there are black diamond apples that aren't green or red, but dark purple. The place where they grow has plenty of ultraviolet light over the day, while the temperatures drastically go down during the night, which makes the apple's skin get a darker color. You can taste garlic with your feet. Rub a clove right on your feet. Take the socks off beforehand, and wait for it. The chemical responsible for its unique smell can be absorbed through the skin, even though the clove was never in your mouth. The moon has volcanoes, and scientists believe they might have been active around 100 million years ago, when dinosaurs still ruled our planet. The view must have been magnificent. Cockroaches are tough. They can survive harsh conditions and have been around since dinosaurs ruled our planet. But the termite queen beats all that with a lifespan of 50 years. That's the longest any insect can live. Regular termites live only 1 to 2 years. It's estimated that a total of 108 billion people lived on Earth throughout history. The entire population of Earth could fit inside Los Angeles. With the world's population being 7.5 billion, this seems crazy. But if everyone stood shoulder to shoulder, we could all fit inside 500 square miles. The tuatara is a reptile that has a third eye on top of its head. The eye has a retina, nerve connections, and a lens, but isn't used for seeing, as during growth it quickly becomes covered by scales. Scientists are still trying to find the eye's mysterious function. Camels have 3 sets of eyelids and 2 rows of eyelashes to protect them from the blowing sands of the desert. The pandas in your local zoo may look at home, but unless you're in China, they're just on vacation. That's because technically, all pandas are on loan from China and are the property of that country. A full current NASA spacesuit cost between $15 and $22 million in 1974, but NASA hasn't actually built any new suits since '74, leading to them only having 4 working suits left. If they are to create another suit, in today's money, that would translate to a cost of $150 million. A tiny percentage of static that you see on an old TV screen is residual radiation left over from the Big Bang. If you're heading to London to see the famous London Bridge, think again, as the original bridge is now in Arizona. By the 1960s, London Bridge was falling down, so the city decided to sell it to an American oil tycoon, Robert P. McCullough. It was shipped over to the US and can now be found in Lake Havasu City. Speaking of England, the crown jewels contain 2 of the largest cut diamonds of all time. The Cullinan diamond is the largest diamond ever found and is part of the sovereign scepter with cross. The second gem is the aptly named Cullinan II, which is mounted in the impressive imperial state crown. The real giants among diamonds, though, could be raining down on Jupiter and Saturn as you watch this video. That's because lightning storms turn methane into carbon, which gradually hardens as it falls and turns into diamonds. Next time you're struggling to concentrate when studying, try reaching for a stick of gum. A study found that participants who chewed gum while taking a memory test could stay focused longer than those who didn't. Common sense would suggest that trees have been around before most animals, as they produce oxygen for us to breathe. If you were to tell this to a shark, it would laugh, as the sea creatures were actually around long before trees. Sharks date back around 400 million years, with trees coming in at about 50 million years later. The Comic Sans font has divided people across the world for decades and has developed a reputation for being informal or unprofessional. This makes perfect sense given its creation, as designer Vincent Canare looked to his favorite comic books, like Watchmen, for inspiration. If you're looking for a bodyguard from the animal kingdom, look no further. The silverback gorilla can lift up to 10 times its own body weight, which translates to a total of around 1,800 pounds. This makes them one of the strongest living mammals on Earth. Humans are the only animals with chins, while other animals like the chimpanzee share similarities with humans, like walking on 2 legs or having a jaw. None actually have that little bit of bone in the middle of the lower jaw. Movie trailers were originally shown after the movie, which is why they're called trailers. The current American flag was designed by a high school student. Bob Heft designed the flag for his history class in 1958 and was only given a B- for his efforts. Later, his design was chosen out of more than 1,500 others to become the new flag. His grade was unsurprisingly changed to an A after this. Unlike humans, cats don't have the same amount of toes on their front and back paws. They usually have 5 toes on their front paws, but only 4 on their back ones. If you've got a feline companion, go and take a look. Ever wondered what that tiny pocket in your jeans is for? It's a watch pocket, and was originally intended as a place to store pocket watches. It dates back to 1879, to the first pair of Levi's jeans. Your brain uses different hemispheres to store different memories. Things you hear or read are stored in the left hemisphere, and pictures or events you've seen in the right one. Hidden beneath the ice and frozen earth in Antarctica and Siberia, there are 2 giant viruses. They are 10 times larger than those we know and can survive for tens of thousands of years. There's a real-life Jurassic Park in Monaco. The Kem beds are an extremely rich source of dinosaur fossils, with dozens of species uncovered in the last few decades. Around 34 million years ago, ancient primates crossed the Atlantic from Africa to South America, and nobody knows how.
Well, I hate to break this to you, but money isn't actually made of paper, which also proves that money doesn't actually grow on trees. Most banknotes are 25% linen and 75% cotton, which is why they have such a distinct look and feel. Back in the 19th century, money was made of parchment paper. That's why people could very easily counterfeit it, unlike now. The Eiffel Tower is almost 6 inches taller during the summer. When you heat up some substance, its particles start to move more actively and take up a bigger volume. That's something they call thermal expansion. When the temperature lowers, the substance contracts again. Such an effect is more prominent in gases, but you can also track it in liquids and solids, including iron. Because of this, people build large structures like bridges using expansion joints. They allow a structure some leeway to expand and contract, and such changes don't cause any damage. Wow, I have some pants like that. Now, honey can last for thousands of years without going bad. Bees land on flowers to collect sugary nectar. Then they transport it back to their hive and transfer it to other worker bees. These bees reduce the water content of the nectar by repeatedly drinking and regurgitating the liquid. Bee barf. Special enzymes in their stomachs break down the glucose in the nectar, and it becomes more acidic. Bees deposit this nectar in the honeycomb and start fanning it with their wings so that the water evaporates more quickly. The honey is now highly acidic and low in water content, which keeps it safe from spoiling. The bacteria that can cause the rest of the food to go off can't survive in such conditions. Now, a long time ago, people didn't elevate their mattresses off the floor. This practice started in ancient Egypt and continued in many other cultures. People realized it was cold on the floor, and they could warm their beds easier if they were off the ground. Houses used to be more drafty. Cold air came in from under the doors. There was no central heating, so people had to find other ways to stay warm. Warm air tends to rise, and if you're positioned higher, you won't be as cold as on the floor. Also, this way, people could keep their beds clean more easily. In simple homes, floors used to be way dirtier than today, and all that dirt usually migrated into beds. Continuing now to talk dirty, do you think people are naturally clean and tidy? After all, our ancestors, who lived thousands of years ago, already used latrines and were tidying their hair with combs, and they kept their homes and themselves clean. Our natural need for hygiene and cleanliness is driven by our sense of disgust. That's the very mechanism that helps our bodies stay safe and protects them from different infections. That's why we're more sensitive to certain smells and things. But we still have some pretty sloppy habits. For example, eating snacks over a keyboard. Ew! I certainly never do that. But there are animals that are even neater than us humans. For example, rattlesnakes like to keep their surroundings tidy. Some of them even use their muscular necks and triangular heads to sweep aside messy grass when they hunt. Many animals like to clear their path when going after their future meal. Reptiles too. Less vegetation increases their chances of catching food. Songbirds also prefer to keep it neat and get rid of uneaten food, eggshells, and other trash in their nests. This way, they also make their homes less visible to their enemies. Meanwhile, out in space, shadows are darker on the moon than on our planet. That's because the atmosphere on Earth scatters more sunlight. But if you could visit the moon, you'd observe shadows so dark you wouldn't be able to see where you were going. Also, you'd notice fresh footprints on the lunar surface. People haven't set foot there in a few decades, but the footprints look as if they were left just yesterday. Since there's no water or wind on the moon, nothing can erase these footprints. So they stay there in their original form for millions of years. So be careful where you step, huh? Earth's core contains enough gold to coat the entire planet. And if you decided to do this, the level of this precious metal would be knee-high. For thousands of years, people have been mining gold and platinum, together with a bunch of other precious metals, from underneath our planet's surface. That's why we have depleted some of the minerals in certain areas. But Earth still has a huge number of such deposits, especially if you get closer to its core. That's because of countless meteorites that collided with our planet during the period of its formation. Those meteorites contain different minerals, including gold. Back then, Earth was still in its molten state, which is why most of the gold, a heavy element, sank deep into its core. And the silicate mantle, positioned over the core, trapped really huge amounts of gold and some other minerals. Unfortunately, most of them are kind of out of reach now, since we talk about 1,800 miles below the surface and temperatures of thousands of degrees. Too hot, in other words. Sure, if you were about to go into space, one of the first things you'd think of would be your spacesuit. But do you know that it's possible to survive in space even if you aren't wearing any protection? Well, don't get your hopes up yet. You'd last for no more than 15 seconds. That's how long it would take you to lose consciousness, because oxygen will stop coming to your brain. In 1965, one technician accidentally depressurized his suit inside a vacuum chamber. He lost consciousness after 12 to 15 seconds. 27 seconds later, his suit luckily got repressurized. The man later said that he remembered the moisture on his tongue started to boil. He also lost his sense of taste, and it didn't come back until 4 days after the accident. Now, you can't hold your breath in space either, so that won't save you. Your lungs will rupture at one point because the air inside will expand. The oxygen in other parts of your body will start to expand too, which means you will balloon up to twice your regular size, almost like Dudley Dursley's Aunt Marge from Harry Potter. Well, not quite. You won't explode, only thanks to your elastic skin. It will keep holding you together, and the liquids in your body will start vaporizing pretty quickly too. Doesn't that sound pleasant? No! The ocean has its iconic blue color thanks to sunlight. When the sun shines, the water absorbs longer orange and red wavelengths of light and reflects shorter blue light waves. This is only possible when there's a huge amount of water. So, the more water you have in one place, the bluer it becomes. That's why the water you pour in your glass has nothing in common with this beautiful ocean blue color. The ocean performs many important functions. For one thing, it produces 50 to 80% of all the oxygen on our planet, which means it keeps us alive. But it also helps the internet to function. So, when you're laughing at a funny dog video or binge-watching your favorite series, yup, thank the ocean for that. The majority of the cables that power the internet, and therefore allow people from all over the world to use it, run underwater. Those are submarine communications cables, miles and miles of wiring crisscrossing the ocean floor. There are special boats for putting all that in place. They're designed specifically for that purpose. To make sure nothing damages the cables and your internet, people need to put them on relatively flat stretches of the ocean floor. The cables also need to be away from old shipwrecks or large ocean ecosystems. Some of these cables have a special coating that protects them from damage. This way, no hungry sharks or curious fish have a chance to munch on the wiring. Now, trees talk. Well, not exactly like people do, but they have their own way of communication. Their roots are connected through an underground network of fungi. That network got its name of the Wood Wide Web. Thanks to this network, trees can share resources with one another. That's how they talk. They use these fungi to transmit nutrients and water from one tree to another. For example, there's a mother tree or another tree that's stronger and older than others in the forest. So it shares some of its nutrients and sugars with small trees growing nearby. Thanks, Mom! Now look at all these insects flying around on a nice sunny day. Do you think they get sunburned? Well, those that spend most of their time in the open don't. They have dark exoskeletons that contain melanin. That's how they block UV rays. But insects that live underground and in the water, or nocturnal creatures, have paler and thinner skin. If they spend too much time outside during the day, they can indeed get sunburned, or even worse, they could get eaten. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.